Okay, so today will be my episode 2 of like my return to writing streams, or at least a pseudo attempt at doing that. And it's going to be using digital paper instead of real paper, or really what I would use is the WordPad. So it's just kind of a gimmick to do that. So my review of this thing overall is kind of middle of the road. Like it does what it's supposed to do with the notes, and that's pretty much all it is. You can write as if it's real paper. I guess the only reason why you would do that instead of using real paper is because like the reason why I'm doing it is almost just it's a cool gimmick, or I just wasted money on it because whatever, it's from a while ago and I was just sitting gathering dust, so I figured this is a good excuse to use the webcam. Like my last 2 weeks have been almost hijacked by my desire to do that, but I'm still doing kind of the same things I would normally do. Like this would be just a just chatting stream basically for whatever Wednesday that I would sometimes do, or like last week I introduced the webcam on Tuesday to play chess, to show the board while playing chess. And then Wednesday I thought, okay, let's carry that over. So then I did chess again on Wednesday with the same setup. Then on Saturday I said, okay, let me try this for the first time. And so this is the second one now, using whatever Wednesday to do that. So that's what this format's kind of good for, is just to sort of fill in, or you just feel like doing something, so you just do it instead of like something that's normally in my schedule that I do on a fixed rotation. So the thing with this is, again, it's like virtual paper. It gives you the feel of writing with the thing. I guess it gives you like either privacy, like you can put all your shit in here without somebody nosing around and reading it, because whatever, it's like the notes on your phone. But it would make you think, like, why not just get a tablet, right? Because you can probably simulate the same thing. And I remember, like, even on my Nintendo DS, you could take out the little stylus and write like as if it was a pen. So maybe it's an overblown gimmick, but there are other products like this. This is a whole archetype of thing. So I'm not like vouching for this one or saying this one's good or anything, especially just because, oh, it's Kindle or I'm streaming on an Amazon owned platform. Like, it is what it is. It seems okay for its purpose, but the one missed opportunity is the other functionality. Like, whatever operating system it runs on is really shitty, and you don't have apps, you don't have games, you don't have any other. You should be able to watch TV on it, all these kind of things if you want, movies, YouTube. The reason why that's pertinent is because, again, think about it like it's a tablet. So if a tablet just had an app that let you do the same thing or has like a similar feature, right, this goes out the window. You can just scribble with your hand instead or something. So, and it actually came with like tips for the pen. So like I don't know how those would get worn out, really. Like it's they're trying to simulate like a pencil running out or whatever, but it doesn't make sense. Why would that be? Whatever. Yeah, you're not wasting paper. Spend $300 and waste this expensive technology that they probably ravaged the planet to make, just like most technology obviously does, so that you can save a couple of pieces of paper over the course of your lifespan or whatever. This will end up being the way that we do it in schools now, right? Everybody will be given something like this to write on. I can't remember the name of the other one, but I've seen ads for it. Again, that's how they just market it, like, oh, it's virtual paper. So there isn't really much to show off on here. I did play a game of chess on here just to show off whether you could do that. So you could theoretically play like great games on your browser, or at least primitive games like chess that are so outdated that even this operating system can run them. But like you could probably do maybe flash games or something. It's just to try to give it some purpose other than the core thing, right? You always want to feel like you can do something else on there besides what you bought it for, and then just kind of derp around, and then you'll never get around to actually using it properly. But yeah, we'll look at this, and I was gonna come up with like an itinerary of stuff to talk about or different quotes and stuff to go over, but I always miss the chance, so I don't really know what I want to do. I'll discuss like some maybe just fun topics, like something whatever, like about a show or some. I'll correct an ending to something. I'm not really sure. I like to just kind of go off an associative process with this kind of thing, whether it be just chatting or otherwise. Like you just go and jump from random topic to topic and let your last topic inform the next one, even if it's like a segue. You go in a totally different direction, but somehow is inspired from the last one. But let me think. So yeah, there's not really much I care to show on here because it's all going to be, copyright books, like the Hellbound Heart. We could do an ASMR reading stream of that, which, again, are you really going to get in trouble for it? Probably not. Certainly the way the React content works in this day and age, people watch like full movies and post it, or they'll show like full scenes of movies. If you look up any reaction to a Star Wars movie or reaction to any movie, right, you'll see like 20, 30 minutes of it in there. And it's like, yes, it's fair use, but is it really? Because I mean, I don't know how it works, but it's gotten to a weird state where it's very inconsistent. Like if they want to ban you for it, they will, or it's some sort of rich get richer problem. Like, oh, you're already established, so they'll give you the rights to do it, even though all those years that you used to establish yourself, you didn't have those rights, right? Like Flight Reacts or somebody. they would have reacted to NBA games or something that they weren't allowed to do. But then because their channel exploded so much and they maybe weren't noticed before then, so nobody cared to ban them, now once they become big and they have millions of subscribers, now they'll say, oh, well, we'll make a deal with you and we'll actually let you watch it because you're so big that it actually helps us, like the NBA or somebody. So it's the same thing with these movie companies. Oh, they'll go easy on you if you're a big channel. But the way that you became a big channel was to betray them and do it so sort of underhandedly and steal their content and react to it anyway. And so they could be salty about that. Like that's what Nintendo does. They'll be salty in the sense of, oh, we're gonna just ban everybody and we don't like you streaming our games, or there's all kind of issues with that. I wouldn't even mind if those things were demonetized or anything, though. I mean, my channel is not really monetized anyway, my YouTube and stuff, but I wouldn't even care. Like, as long as I can do it, don't stop me from fucking streaming Zelda or something, right? It just doesn't make sense. But let's see, what else did I want to do? There's really not much to do on here. I mean, you could look through like anything on the web, like read through a Wikipedia article or something. One problem with this last time was it's hard to get the angle right compared to my writing and the reading of it. Like, I have to write it here and then I'll turn it back or something. So it's hard to just do it in one comfortable sense, because then either I can't see it or then you can't see it on there, and my angle and my setup isn't the greatest. But no, this is the core functionality of it. So let me write out like some itinerary and of what we're trying to do. Yeah, the main purpose, again, either you want it for privacy, maybe, like you don't want your papers with whatever random stuff you're writing all around, or it could be for some other purpose like convenience, like it's all in one place, even though that's what a real life notebook is for. You can maybe transfer it to a digital place very easily, so you can like take notes and then put it on your computer instead of like having to take a picture of every piece of paper. I'm trying to like come up with a reason why this thing would exist, or this sort of thing would be a problem, but or why anybody would want it, but I am having trouble actually doing that. Let's start off with something like a let's do one term. See, I need a more structure to it. I'm just too random, but okay. Dependent overextended pretense. This is a mouthful of a term from the court of reason that we would use. This is a good way to define certain things as how they work with respect to social interactions, romance, anything like that. So basically what it means is there's always a defining factor, right? So a defining factor in a relationship would be, let's just put defining, and my writing is not very good here either. Define, oh my god. Or it's like it wants to simulate the feeling of erasing something. Defining factors. So if you put it here, you'll say without which all pretenses cease, right? So an easy example would be something along the lines of, oh, I love them for their personality, but at the same, like whatever, in a relationship, hypothetical, somebody saying this, I love them for their personality, or I love them for something or something. But if they looked way worse than what they did, right? If they were ugly by your subjective preference standard, then yeah, I even talk around. I won't say, oh, if they're such and such insert thing here, because then people of that would get offended. Like, oh, I'm not even saying whatever by your standard. If they were ugly, then all of a sudden their personality wouldn't matter as much, or if they didn't have money, or if they were poor, or something like that. So regardless of idiosyncrasies and anecdotal personal preferences, the point is the defining factor might still be one of those two things. So it'll be either we'll evoke another term. So in relationships, we'll just say relationships. You'll say stimuli acme is a defining factor, which is, again, to do with sex. And then number two is going to be like means, maybe money, wealth, things like that. Right? So if you take either of those two things away, now all of a sudden all the other things go out the window. Because an easy way to test that is, oh, like, oh, they're my best friend too, and we, whatever, we like their personality, things like that. But if you take away those two things, right, think about it on a raw sense. Like, there's no stimuli acme, meaning no sexual anything, right? No romance, anything like that. So now all of a sudden, would you still, oh, but I like their personality. Would you still live with the person? Would you still split your finances with them? Would you still get married with them? Like, so this is more of the defining factor, right? So it doesn't discredit the other elements, but it says like you try to justify something like, why are you with this one person in particular out of everybody in the world? It's not because, oh, they happen to evoke the nearness postulate, not nearness postulate that, oh, they just happen to live by you. See, this is why these terms are valuable. I don't have to write out the whole thing. You know what it means, or maybe you don't, but whatever. Like, because they live near me, because they went to the same school as me, because they went to the same college as me, they work at the same job as me, right? They're in my same geographical distinction, so you'll try to talk around that. No, it's not that reactionary process that I had basically no choice in, aside from, between the people that I came into contact with in that circumstance. Although in the modern day, you can still say, oh no, you'll meet somebody halfway across the world on the internet. But as a general sense, this is a thing, right? You would say the stimuli acme is a defining factor. It could be means, it could be something else, it could be even looks, but I mean that corresponds to the stimuli acme too. So if you look at it that way, those are seen as defining factors. So let's look at another example. Like, this is one that I often say: I love my job. Yeah, I'll even write in absolute to speak at the beginning. So just I'm being lazy. And the fact that it's necessary causes cognitive dissonance, right? The fact that you say, well, you're trying to justify doing something, but you wouldn't do it on its own, right? So, for example, oh, I love this other thing about them, but that's not. If that wasn't there, you might still settle for the stimuli acme. But if the stimuli acme wasn't there, you would never just, oh, I'm going to settle for that because their personality is so good. I'm just going to spend all my time with them and my money on them or whatever, and I'm going to split my finances down the middle and marry them and all this kind of stuff. It just wouldn't happen that way. So when you talk around that, now you create other problems because you're trying to overextend it into other things, right? The natural response might be that you want that one thing and one thing only, or that's the most important thing, it's the defining factor, but then you try to conflate everything, right? Because you like that one thing, or because that one thing is the defining factor, you try to act like everything is desired, but then that creates a conflict of contrivance where that's not really true, but you're trying to keep up appearances, things of that nature. And oftentimes the function of contrivance is the fact that a person does it not just to convince the other person or to keep up appearances to others. It's almost to convince yourself, the idea that you're trying to pose it as an absolute to try to bypass your own cognitive dissonance, that you say, well, why wouldn't I like, what criteria are you using, right? Anybody in the world you could be with. So, oh, I'm with this person because they're so attractive, even if you pose that as your reason, right? You're evoking the stimuli acme, but then you're saying, well, but theoretically, by your own subjective standard, does that mean they're the most attractive person on the planet? If not, then why not be with somebody who is more attractive? So then you'd have to admit, oh, it's because I'm not capable enough to do that, or whatever. I have to settle for somebody in my near environment. So you won't admit these simple objective facts, like whatever your criteria is. Oh, I'm with them even because of their money, but they're richer people you could be with. Or I'm with them because of their looks, but they're more attractive people you could be with, even by your own subjective standard of what attractive is. And then the third thing is like, oh, I'm with them because of their personality, but even by your same metric, there could be somebody out of 8 billion people in the world with a better personality, again, by your own subjective defining standard. So none of those are justifiable to specify it to that one person only. So then this is why undue emphasis has to be placed. So everything, let's hold off on the I love my job thing for a second, but the whole thing with the romance in part 2 is this simple fact that, again, you place undue emphasis based on those factors we just laid out, and more importantly than that, you have a situation in which like everything becomes an absolute. Now, this is a human ego process that you can observe pretty easily. It's not just everything is absolute in this context, but in like all contexts, right? Anytime something has to do with like collective human self-interest, let's say, throughout history, right, it's posed as an absolute. Like, for example, people don't want to be hurt or killed, so it's not just that, oh, we make it against the law just so that doesn't happen, right? It's something deeper than that. Oh no, it's a divine decree, it's right and wrong. If you do it, you go to hell, things like that. Like, you turn it into an absolute because you want everything to revolve around you, right? So all standards are human, not human created, but revolve around humans, like the whole universe does and everything like that, to the point that, like, there's this expression we would use sometimes God didn't create humans. Humans created God because he's, it could be a symbol of all their fears, everything you're afraid of. You're going to punish people for it. They go to hell. So it discourages people from doing it, or all the things you want. Like, what are the chances that it's so convenient that everything revolves around your subjective desires, especially at that particular point in time? And a good way to identify that is through the machination process, where you say, in this day and age, in the 21st century, God would strike you down if you steal from somebody in like a way that would be only possible with the technology you have. Like, if I steal from your Venmo account, or if I steal from your PayPal account, what did a God say about that? Or am I going to go to hell for that one? Like, it's so specific and, within the machination process and current technology of the time, that it trivializes it, because then you look at it like, whatever you don't want to happen to you, that's what's going to be condemned, or whatever you like is going to be, upheld by that. So it's just a self-revolving standard, but people always try to elevate it to an absolute, just because you're experiencing it, and not even consistently, because it's not held accountable at all, right? By the same criteria that you would pose it as an absolute or a value, right? Such as that relationship that we're hypothetically talking about, you would still be in the position where, if you use an exact specific criteria and hold it consistently accountable, you'll never be satisfied with that. And you might think, oh, well, this is a moot point and people already maybe know this, but this is why a lot of conflict of contrivance exists, that people don't really know what they want, or they're trying to make it out to be something more than what it is. Now, let's look at the I love my job thing. This is maybe a good way to do it. Like, I'll start with one term of this, and then if it goes into something else, fine. If not, then I can just do other random topics. I don't really have any plan for it. I love my job, but again, if you didn't get paid, don't get paid, now you're no longer doing it. So you might think, oh, well, that's fairly obvious, and that defines like why you choose that one job over other jobs. But that inherent state, like, oh, you do it, or like another phrase with that, like, oh, I enjoy helping people, but if you could make more money in a job that didn't involve helping people, or something like that, right? Like, it's hard to say that's the defining factor. You're just saying that because you're already there. So it's this need of contrivance to a contrivance state to insist upon itself. You're in a position. This is a good way to define contrivance, right? You are in a position, or a person, hypothetical person, is thus reinforce it. So in other words, everything is seen from that lens. You're not looking at it objectively, like, oh, how good is this thing for me to do, or what is it that I'm doing, what's the value of it, what's the criteria behind it. You're already there, so now you try to cherry pick and look only from the perspective that, oh, I want to reinforce what I'm doing, so I can never be wrong, there can never be anything better to do, I should just settle for it, I should just reactively say it's good for this reason, this reason, this reason, and not even look externally to hold those same reasons accountable, like, oh, maybe that for that same reason that I like this, something else could be better. So you're not even posing a standard. So that's the whole point behind a lot of these topics, is it's a self-created standard, right? Nobody is saying this is what your standard should be, right? Your measure is what we often call it, a measure, right? Whatever your measure of what value is in something, you should define it, right? This is, I'm doing this because of blank, and then use that blank in other contexts to say, okay, now let me measure everything by that and see what is the best. So by your own measure, you should be consistent. The problem is that what most people often do is they don't even do that. They just blindly, reactively go through something like, oh, this is just what I'm doing, so I'm just doing it, and just reinforce it and try to make the best of it. This is the sort of opposite interpretation to do with positive undue emphasis. Overcompensation of undue positive emphasis, right? So now, by being positive and having, oh, like, have a positive attitude and be happy about something, or, don't be negative, don't be a downer, don't be a pessimist, all those kind of things. The reality of it is that the fact that you're doing that means that no matter what the state is, you could always, so like something could be bad, but instead of recognizing it's bad and trying to fix it or trying to improve it or do something better, you'll just reinforce it. So this is where positive actually becomes a negative. This is the opposite interpretation that we always talk about. So because you're being positive, it shows you that the state that you're trying to reinforce by being positive and overcompensate for is actually negative by your own, but these are all by your own subjective standards, that whatever is being used, right, hypothetically. So you reinforce a negative state by being overly positive and placing undue emphasis. If it was really a positive state, or at least an adequate one, you wouldn't need to do that. It would speak for itself. So that's the imbalance that you see. So when you see something let me think how I can explain it. Like artifice doesn't last. This is another expression from there. And then some sort of little story to go along with that. Like one person is considered rude, and everyone else, like one shopkeeper is considered rude, and the other ones are considered so nice. They're always so happy and smiling and talkative and all this kind of stuff. And the other guy, doesn't talk and whatever. They're just it seems like they're just doing their job. But the other ones are all gone in a short period of time. And then he's there forever. He outlasts all of them because he's being genuine, even if it doesn't seem as superficially good. And this is the problem with what society sort of rewards. They'll reward something that appears good on the surface and sort of this undue emphasis, but they won't reward like the actual reality behind it. Like, oh, the best person at something or the most hardworking person is not the one, Alex Botez or something in a nutshell. You reward the superficial element of just like, oh, it looks good on the surface or it looks good. I'm talking about the overall channel, not even the stimuli acme there, but something on the surface, right? It just has like, oh, the nice and funny and this and that, instead of people who are actually good by the same process, like actual grandmasters and things like that. And so the point here is that the genuine ones don't need to put up that sort of act. Whereas again, if there is this undue positive emphasis, you see this maybe with like car salesmen or something like that. Like if you have to try that hard, maybe something's wrong, or maybe you're, used car salesman sort of trope that people have, right? That you have to try that hard means it's not going to be a good thing, or you're sort of overcompensating for something. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind with the overly positive elements that sometimes are present, right? Somebody trying super hard and being super nice and being super talkative and stuff. And of course, people mold this into their own state of being, right? This is so important in any sort of work environment or any sort of business or job or anything like that, is this superficial contrivance that people do where that becomes more important. But if, for example, look at it this way, if what you're doing, if a practice or product, right, whatever you're doing for work is sound or of a high quality, right, no emphasis is needed. So in other words, you could be like this whole archetype that I pose, like you could be monotone, you could be, boring, uninteresting, but what you're providing and posing is actually good. So you don't need to place any special emphasis on it. Or rather, that's what the focus becomes. Like, oh, you went to this restaurant because they're so nice there, not because the food is actually good. Something along those lines, right? Which should be the defining factor. Who cares how they are? It could just be, in this day and age, it'll just be a robot serving you now with everything going to automation. Oh, that's another good topic here. So this is the one that you could criticize and say, like self checkout, right? You'll lose your job down the road, and it's because you use self checkout. So it's actually your fault. So let's go into some elitist victim blamer terms here, or mindset. Elitist victim blamer as a hypothetical character type, which we kind of touched on this last time with Aral, the world's richest man, first trillionaire, that sort of character archetype that I've used in the past. So, if you use self-checkout and then you end up losing your job to automation, that's your fault. So this is what the elitist victim blamer mindset actually comes around to. It sounds bad, certainly by the term, and it is quite the loaded term, but it's fine. What you're actually doing is you believe and value potential ability, whatever, I can't even write, ability, etc. of people. So in other words, you would not tolerate excuses being made or anything like that. So it's like, oh no, be nice. You should settle for their poor performance, or don't push them too hard. But it's like you're doing it because you know how capable they are, and you hate seeing these excuses. So what you see in the modern era, this is like one anti-fallacy element. You would look at like medical terms, conditions, weaponized. This is one reason why I've fallen out of love with psychology a little bit, at least in terms of working in the field. Medical terms and conditions weaponized to justify or excuse flaws, right, of a person. So they'll label somebody and they'll say their insert label here. They have this condition there, right? You see this a lot with whatever. I'll even use them as examples because I'm not the one saying it, and I'm even criticizing this use of the terms. But they'll say, oh, they're autistic, or they have ADHD, or they have this or that, or some people even say it about themselves, like, oh, I did that because I have this and that. This is where people sort of lose the whole meaning of those things, that like they're defining themselves by it, or they're, you know what I mean? That doesn't have to stop you from doing anything, or like your OCD or something. So, like, I even say that sometimes, but that just means I'm particular about something. It doesn't mean it has to hurt your performance. So, like, let me pose it this way: like, caveman had insert label here, right? Any of those conditions, autism, ADHD, OCD, like, did those conditions exist then, or is it just like some reactionary thing that somehow modern society and human technology has somehow created that? But the point is that they still, what are they going to do then? Are they going to use it as an excuse, like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, when some, wildlife is chasing me, or I have to hunt, I have to, you would just do your own thing. You would have to do what's necessary, and so it wouldn't be an excuse and it wouldn't be defining. But we live in that sort of time period where everything is an excuse, right? And it's almost like this state of being a victim is somehow desirable at times, that like you want some sort of special treatment or reparations for something or whatever. So this is the point, that like you would just have to deal with it. So you go from that mentality to, no, now we make all these excuses and we somehow define ourselves by that. And also, it's the problem with idiosyncrasies here with respect to, okay, like somebody does a particular thing, like they're clean, neat, etc., right? Now, everybody might be clean or neat or care about that, or that's just a common trait. But now that turns into, oh, it's OCD. Now, again, what if you just like things clean? It doesn't mean that. So it's either like to an extreme, like, oh, well, if it's to an extreme, too much in one direction or another, like being clean is a good thing. So what's wrong with that? Not that I necessarily even am, just as a hypothetical sense, right? So like Monica from Friends was seen as having OCD before, I guess, that was even used commonly as a term. But again, why can't it just be that you're clean? Now, if it bothers you so much, then you can label it, but it doesn't matter. So it's an idiosyncrasy or tendency. So like you can take any idiosyncrasy that anybody has and say, oh, because they have this little habit or preference or tendency, now all of a sudden they're defined by it, and we'll give them a label to go with it, as if everybody doesn't have that. Like, it poses this sort of false absolute of normalcy in which everybody is like perfect and has no idiosyncrasies of any kind, no preferences, no personality traits. Everybody's just like a blank slate that acts in exactly the same way all the time. And then anytime something deviates from that, where they have some strong preference or quality about them, whether it be positive or negative as how it's perceived, now all of a sudden that defines them. Oh, you must be insert label here. It can't just be that, oh, you're a human being who has certain differences and tendencies and idiosyncrasies all the way, like everybody does. So if you look deeply enough, like observe somebody, Truman Show style for 24/7, right, hypothetically, in a vacuum, and you'll be like, oh, he cleaned his room, so therefore he must be OCD, or oh, he had an awkward conversation, so he must have this condition, or oh, you can read into anything like that if you really want. So it becomes so arbitrary. People are just trying to make excuses or come up with labels and define things by what is you talking to a mic to yourself, even whether somebody's watching or not, which is actually a good quality to have. That's how you should treat it. Whether you have 1 million, so that means you must be crazy or schizophrenic or something, right? All these big streamers, they're talking to themselves all day for a living. But I mean, I guess as soon as money's involved, that validates it. Let's look at one more thing, like the influence postulate, the idea that you have certain negative influences. So throughout history, it was like, oh, comic books make our kids do something bad. And then it's like rock music. This is like a diagram that I've used before. Rock music is doing it. Then you'll say video games are doing it, things like that. So it's always something blamed, never accountability, right? It's never the person's fault. Everything is always the fault of something else, some other influence. The devil made me do it. Something else made me do it, right? So this is where you have this excuse-making mentality that the elitist victim blamer would shun. So what he's actually saying in doing that, right? The perspective is saying that you're highly capable. None of these things hold you back. You're not defined by any of them. So it's actually a positive message that your potential is very high, but you're too lazy and stupid and you want to make excuses to try to subvert it, right? Instead of just saying, no, you, despite all those things, you can do whatever you have to do. Or people who are successful aren't perfect, right? They have idiosyncrasies too, but they don't let them stop them. So that's the only real condition, is that you're an excuse making clown based on this from this perspective. Now let me do some other thing, I guess. I don't know. It's very hard for me to come. This is the kind of thing you almost need like a bigger chat sort of thing to do, and you go with like what they want to hear about, or I can just like rehash topics. Like let me do a fun little one here, since I did that anime tier list the other time. Death. Oh, whoops. Death Note. Hey, thanks for the follow, Iron Man. How's it going? Okay, so you'll do like, what if, this is a topic that people always hypothetically discuss. What if L was Kira? So now we'll assume like, at what point would he lose, or how would he perform? So first of all, you can qualify by saying, let's say Light. This is the one point that they always miss. Light in the Yotsuba arc, right? Now this is without the Death Note. So people always try to say, oh, L is smarter than Light, and even the author says that, but I go more by qualified intelligence of what they show actually within the course of the show. So here you have, in the Yotsuba arc, right, he lost his memories and he doesn't have the notebook. So that supernatural element is more like an equalizing factor, where you would say it allows him to kill people all around the world and reduce worldwide crime by 70%, which even as smart as he is, or like as smart as L is, right, they wouldn't be able to do that part. But he wouldn't try to do it either. It's not like he's going to be a vigilante and just beat people up and, go down the street and do it. So he's kind of aware of the ability that it gives him and maximizes it. But you also see the other example that, like, so in the Yotsuba sequence, this is the whole reason why it's put in there. And I feel like a lot of people miss that when they try to compare the two characters. They'll say, like, okay, well, it's not fair to L because Light's using this magical notebook. But the magical notebook doesn't help him get away with his crimes. It helps him commit them in the first place. In other words, he wouldn't even try to do what he's doing if he didn't have that. So now he knows the ability that he has, the means argument that we always talk about. Like, once you know the means that you have available, now you decide what you want to do with it. So I'm going to change the world and reduce crime by 70%. So that's an equalizing factor, because Higuchi has the notebook, Misa has the notebook, even Mello has the notebook. Right, and none of them perform as well with it as he does, right? They get caught. Misa's kind of stupid by comparison. Higuchi's like a little too brash and headstrong and things like that. So they're able to get caught, and that's one of the key things. Light's the one who comes up with the connection to Yotsuba too. So in that Yotsuba arc, he's at least equally capable as a detective, again, without the supernatural element, as L. So that shows them on a very equal footing, and I think that's part of the reason why that whole part of the show is put in there, or the manga is put in there, right? To show that, okay, they're equal on this level. And so now if we go with that mindset, the main strength that Light has over L will like go to his hypothetical end. Like, let's go super in detail about it. So Light is better in terms of charisma and the social skills, and you see this especially with Naomi Mizora, and this is almost the moment that I would pose hypothetically at the beginning of this. That's where L would lose, in that one episode where they're walking down the street. Because yes, people might bring up, well, L knew Naomi, but you can't really use that. Pretend they didn't know each other, whatever, right? L gets the Death Note, and he's trying to do the same thing that Light does in terms of the intention, kill criminals, reduce worldwide crime, things like that. So assuming he's trying to do that, then could he, in that moment, given how he looks, given his whole, social, he's sometimes socially very capable, but in like more a scripted or professional sense, not in like a formal setting or whatever, where he's like not. There are just certain things that Light does there that seem to far outseed what L can do. And there might be certain things that L has, like he's better in terms of his temperament. He wouldn't be so egotistical about it. He might do it in a more low-key way, where he's not trying to prove he's the god of the new world and this and that. So that might be his strength. But the point here is that if the sequence of events went the same way that it did, which it probably wouldn't, right? So we'll deal with that in a second. But if he ended up in that Naomi Misora situation where he had to get her name on the street and convince her to trust him, even though, again, they had spoken over video when they worked on a case together, and I've never even read or seen that, whatever it is, like the BB murder case, something like that. I don't know if it's in manga form or they made a movie of it or video of it. I don't even know. Or like episodes of it. But the point is that he would have a hard time, I think, convincing somebody in that situation. Again, assume they don't know each other. She was impressed by his intelligence, but maybe once you actually see his appearance, and again, he struggles to be as persuasive, especially when he is, in this scenario, the bad guy. He's not actually, the good Detective Al that we would know. So now all of a sudden, I think he would fail there and lose there. But he might not get to that point because we can retrace the steps throughout the series. So the first big moment is the confrontation. Now, I'll give Al a certain credit here that he might be more composed, where he sort of Lindell Taylor, right, appears on TV. So he might just not kill Lindell Taylor. Now, part of this isn't that, Light is just stupid, because as we see throughout the series, right, he's much smarter than somebody who would just do that. Like, obviously, Al's setting up a trap on TV, right, to have the stand-in, so he puts his name very conspicuously there. So Light in that moment is going through his more emotional or egotistical weakness. It's not that he's not smart, it's that he's too proud, or he wants to prove a point, right? He wants the world to know of his existence, like he says, everything like that. So he wants to kill Lindell Taylor, Al, to prove a point. But once he knows the capability of Al, this is where he's an expert in psychology, that he knows what L's capability is. So in a way, you could say, that moment's a big mistake for Light. But it's actually, in a way, a mistake for L, because now he's showing Light how capable he is. Right? The best way to beat someone like Light is maybe to make them underestimate you. Like he kind of underestimates Nier in a way, although that's still not why he loses. But the point is, you make him underestimate you, and then his guard is down. Once it goes through that humiliation against Lindell Taylor, where he finds out he's in Kanto region of Japan, and he kind of mocks him on TV. Now he knows how capable L is, so now he's way more careful, and he treats him like a worthy adversary, and then does end up beating him. And then what else do we have? So let's say that he doesn't fall for that. Right? So he would have to fall for something more subtle. And I guess you could assume that, Light's the one in the position of L, but let's not even do that. Just hypothetically, there's somebody, on L's level, right, trying to figure out what he's doing, or just the worldwide police trying to figure out what he's doing. So he doesn't fall for that. So confrontation fails, let's say. It fails to expose him. So he wouldn't let that happen. So now he's at an advantage, right? That's a +1 because of his emotional temperament, or whatever the case may be there. Then, I don't know why I even just randomly thought of this, but this is why it's good. I'll just do random subjects. But one of these days, I should just do like a proper short story myself. Or there is one that I was thinking of doing, like a fan fiction fucking one for, try to fix the ending of, I guess you could even do it for this show too, but like The Mentalist. Let's try to fix that last scene and try to come up with a better ending for the stupid pigeon moment that everybody hates so much, that lives rent-free in everybody's head. But confrontation fails, so that's a +1 for him. So at what point would he have an element be exposed? Like, what's something he would be weak at? The Naomi Mizora moment, I guess we could do it by that, but I kind of wanted to do it in a sequence of events. Like, that event might not happen, but let's just do it this way. So we go -1. So this is L versus Light, so you'd say he would be better in the confrontation moment. He would be worse in the Naomi moment because he might have better emotional temperament, but he also has worse social skills, right? So that seems to be logically consistent. So what would be another key moment that happens early on, like the Ray Penber thing? Now, technically, that probably is an equal factor because, or you know what? This will be kind of an interesting one as far as game theory is concerned. Technically, this is still a +1 to Light. And the reason why is because, yes, Ryuk helps him, but maybe Ryuk wouldn't help L, or maybe Ryuk wouldn't like L as much, because L is more mild-mannered and tempered, and Ryuk almost respects in Light. Like, he's sort of taken aback a little bit, even in the first episode, where he's like, this guy has no trouble giving me a hard time, or he just like talks shit to Ryuk. He almost likes that and finds Light so interesting. So assuming he doesn't find Light as L as interesting, it might be because L is kind of more boring, stick in the mud type, whereas Light again is like so charismatic and he's so popular at school, and you see L is kind of a little bit awkward, even if they call him like a mad genius type and all this stuff. So he's just definitely more antisocial. And that's one characterization of season 2 that almost fails, because like Nier and Mela are supposed to be like two halves of L, so like in extreme. So like maybe Nier is as smart as L, or almost as smart, but he's even more socially awkward. But L is already pretty socially awkward, so that almost doesn't convince it. Again, he can be charismatic when he needs to be in certain deductive and professional settings, but Light is definitely more comfortable in these other ways. So in terms of befriending Ryuk in a way, and even though Ryuk's not on his side, right, I would still give that one, or no, this is actually a -1 because it's a +1 for Light. So Ray Penber is like the fact that Ryuk alerts Light to his presence, right? And that whole spiel he gives, like, I'm not on your side, I'm just doing it because it's creeping me out. Maybe this one's a little bit unfair and I shouldn't do it, because again, assuming that neither one would be so observant at that point early on in the series in their career as Kira, because again, Light's not stupid that he wouldn't notice somebody following him, but he's just not expecting it at that point, I guess. So Ryuk has to tell him. And there's some irony with that moment, like where Ray even says before he goes on the bus, before the hijacking, Light doesn't look suspicious, and I'll end my surveillance now. So that's one of those twist of fate moments. If he just didn't do anything on the bus, it would have been over there. But technically, Ray still doesn't suspect him even after the bus tracking. It's just the wife. So it's like a really complicated, downtrodden path. And then the act of the wife dying leads to him being suspected in a roundabout way. Because, oh, who was Ray Penber tailing? The fact that Naomi and Ray both died. Right, and then one of those people happened to be Light. So, but again, Light has no way of knowing that, so you can't really hold that against him. He's doing the right thing, and it does work out. Like, how is he supposed to know that his wife's an FBI? Or you know what? There's one moment that's actually contradictory here, where Light says to Ray, right, I've been investigating you, and then he says, oh, if you don't do what I say, I'll kill her, as if to talk about Naomi at that point. But he doesn't know who Naomi is, and he doesn't know Naomi's name, right? And he's even shocked when he meets her on the street. So that line doesn't make sense. Like, he's just bluffing that, oh, if you don't do what I say, but he at least knows he's with somebody, right? So he, even as smart as Light is, and he's investigating her, it wouldn't be that hard to find out, not that, oh, she's an FBI agent or anything like that, but just that Ray's with somebody and what her name is, and, you know, they're living together or whatever. So you could easily figure that out. So it's interesting that he says that line, if you don't do what I say, I'll kill her, as in Naomi, and Ray believes him, but he's just completely bluffing, and he really doesn't know that, and he really didn't research that. And so what if he's single then? And you might say, oh, well, he knows he's with somebody, but he doesn't know that, because if he did, then he would have found out who she is, right? So that's one of those, I'm not even sure how to really explain that moment. It's almost just a mistake, because this is like when he's in the subway with Ray, right? So he says that then, and then the next episode he's confused, like, who is this woman? Oh my goodness, it's Ray Pender's fiance, who I already said I researched and knew about, and so I should already know her name, but that would make it too easy. So this one is a little bit hard to determine, right? Ryuk would tip him off because he likes him. No, I won't count that, though, because he even says he would have tipped him off just because it's bothering him. So let's leave that one. But I do think Light's rapport with Ryuk would be better than L's because, again, for the same social reason. But I won't even count that as a point then, unless there's some other... Because usually Ryuk is pretty objective, so it almost doesn't matter, right? He's not really helping you. That's the one key moment where he actually does help you. And that's one of those reasons to compare it to another series where I always say Light is more impressive in his performance than, like, Lelouch from Code Geass, because Lelouch gets saved so many times. He gets knocked out one time, and then fucking, what's her name? The redhead girl. I can't even remember her name. Whatever. That one love interest of his, not Colin, although she's also, like, red. She's like... Wait. Fuck, I can't remember their names. Colin kind of has red hair, but so does the other chick. Whatever. That one chick saves him, and then Rolo saves him. So, like, there's that one scene that almost mirrors it, too, where Schneisel turns the Black Knights against Lelouch, kind of similar to when, obviously, Nier is confronting Light at the end of the series, right? And they're both kind of caught. They've both been outsmarted, right? Schneisel was one step ahead, but then, oh, Rolo comes and saves him. Right, nobody comes and saves Light, so that would be the equivalent of, like, oh, Light just gets a bailout and Ryuk saves him, and then he lives to fight another day. So because Lelouch gets that so many times, and Light never gets saved really by anybody, even if you want to count, you know, Misa's almost a liability. Not only doesn't he help him, you could say he gets saved by Rem, but I mean, that's still part of his strategy because Rem was an obstacle to him as well, and he gets her killed too. But, okay, so the Ray thing is there. So I'll leave that one out. Just, again, him just telling Ray that he's there. So what is something that he would be better or worse at than this? Again, he's a +1 there, and he's a -1 here. We could turn this into, like, one of those 1v1 stupid short videos where they... I don't know, there's so many of them on there that you see that'll take, like, one character versus one character, and it'll be, like, a super fast-paced video where it's just showing you, like, which one's better at which stat. What is another big moment at the beginning of the series? Like, noticing the cameras. I think Al would probably be pretty capable of doing that. He might do it in a different way, but like putting the piece of paper. In fact, he says a line like, when I was his age, I did strange things too. Like, why would he put the piece of paper in the door? So that almost validates that he might do the exact same thing the exact same way, right? I would put a piece of paper in my door to see if somebody was there, not just because I was weird at that age, even though he's still weird then, and they're not that different in age, but it's actually going to be like because of that technique kind of speaks to Al, like, oh, that's something I would do anyway, so sure, I would do that. Put the piece of pencil lead and this and that. Although some things that Light does are so above and beyond that it's hard to imagine, but you have to give Al that benefit of doubt. See, he doesn't think of it. Like, he thinks, like, if I was him, what would I do? So then he would think, oh yeah, I would put a pencil lead in the door and I would figure that out. But that's too much to expect even of Al, because at the same time, he's not giving off any real suspicious vibes. Like, oh, I'm just eating potato chips and I'm just, a normal kid. So at that point, I think people misinterpret one element, that, like, Al confronting Light in person, they think, oh, this means that Al's onto him and this and that. It's actually a loss for Al, though, because he's revealing himself in person when he's worked so hard his life to hide his identity and even his face and everything. For him to expose himself so publicly is almost a move of desperation, right? Where he even says, oh, Light's too perfect. He's not going to be able to, even if he is Kira, he's too perfect. He's never going to expose himself. So I have to do something direct. So he meets him in person. So that's something you would only have to do, right, if he's so capable and so slick that you're never going to find him out otherwise. So that is sort of a move of desperation. So even though it looks like, oh, look at Al giving Light a hard time and bothering him and this and that, like, of course he's going to do that because he's smart and hard to deal with, but it does sort of mean it's an element that people don't give Light enough credit for. The fact that he had to do that means that he's like playing his full hand. He's going all in and risking, oh, what if Light has some other thing up his sleeve? Like, what if he had taken the Shinigami eyes, or he could do it at any point and just get L's name? And that's a self-inflicted. Light's playing the series in hard mode. He could get the Shinigami eyes at any point. There's nothing stopping him from doing that. It's just his own ego that says, no, I want to live as long as I want to, as long as I possibly can, right? That's the only thing that stops him from doing that. So that's the way he could just use it as a cheat code. No, I'll just use the eyes and everybody's fucked. And he could use them at some strategic moment. Like, he could have had them the whole series and he just holds it as a trump card, right? Oh, I'm never going to use it. So Al wouldn't suspect that I can kill people without their name or face, or without their name. So he would feel safe in confronting me. So he does do the deal early in the series, but he just never uses it. So it would never indicate that he has it. And then as soon as he meets Al, now I have it. So now it's impossible to prove, oh, he never had the eyes, or he never had a way. They didn't know what the eyes were, obviously. He doesn't have a way to know somebody's name, but now all of a sudden he does. So now you're fucked, right? So that kind of thing could be an easier way for him to win. Because, yeah, anytime he's in the same room as Al, right, when they meet in person, even like when Misa sees him, he's like, I've won. Even if he doesn't kill him right then, he at least has the name, so you can do it at any point. You could control his actions for a while before he dies, and then, make him suspect you less or something. So he confronts him in person. That's almost a negative for that. But okay, let me try to think of some major other events in the series. And again, I'm not even treating it like he's that Light is the one doing the investigating. Just hypothetically, somebody of that high caliber who would come to the same sort of conclusions. So it's an even match so far, because again, you have the Naomi moment. Where's the +1 -1 thing? Oh, here. The confrontation he would do better with. He wouldn't expose himself that way in the Lynn L. Taylor situation, but he would fail the Naomi one. I'm trying to think what other really jumping off points are there. The subway scene, I think maybe they could both do a similar plan there. Light is kind of more ruthless, so even if you assume like that's the whole reason why he's doing the Death Note thing in the first place, but he was just like a normal kid at the beginning, so he summons that willingness in him that he's so committed. This is sort of like the absolutist characterization, right? Absolutist characters are like people who are fully committed to their ideology. So in other words, you never see a character like this. I can't even fucking write, but whatever. They're fully committed. So this is a characterization that you can respect even if you don't agree with them. Like, you're so committed the whole way that you never question whether what you're doing is right or wrong. You decide, you're sure of your measure, like as we always call it, and then you go with it. So it's only a question of your ability. This works so well in game theory, so it's like both characters know that what they're doing is right, or they decide that what they're doing is worth it, and so they never question that. They only question how well they're doing it or not, like my ability to get away with it, not whether it's a right or wrong. So there's no like half-hearted, oh, maybe I should stop, maybe I'm wrong. There's none of that sort of hesitation. Right, so then it comes purely down to ability. That's the way that you make a character like this a lot weaker, is that no, they have a moment of doubt. Like, the Light definitely fits in that category where he never questioned what he's doing. Right, he always just does what's necessary. I guess you could say he kind of questions it a little bit with Sayu, like he doesn't kill her, but even then he tries to justify it, like, oh, I can't do it because only the police know about this or something. But realistically, he probably should have still done it. What is another major event towards the beginning of the series? I almost can't remember. The potato chip thing he probably could have done. A lot of those things. I'm trying to think of something that would be definingly different, right? Where they would approach it in vastly different ways. Even the whole thing of dealing with L, right? Like if this hypothetical other person who's investigating Kira, if L is Kira, would come up to him in the same way, right? He might not deal with that as well in that social situation, because sure, he is dealing with Light, but he's the one who's sort of the aggressor, right? Where Light's more sort of on the defensive, and Al sort of gets the free reign. So now if Al was on the defensive, he might not deal with that as well. But unless I can think of like a specific example, like when he first introduces himself to him, but he would deal with that pretty well too, because again, his emotional state is at least a little more composed. Not that that really hurts Light too much. Even at the end, like, sure, he says, that's right, I'm Kira. So he like confesses almost when he thinks he's gonna win. Or no, he doesn't say that. He says, well, Nier, looks like I win. But the problem with that moment too is, even if he didn't say that, right, his name wasn't written in the book, so he didn't have the real notebook anymore. So in the best case, like, he gets out of that situation, but he didn't like have a backup. So let me think about some other key moments. I really can't think of one that would be too notable. Oh yeah, here's a good example. Right, with Misa, like, and you could say this is lucky, but it's both lucky and unlucky. Dealing with Misa in general is a +1 to Light, because somehow it's a case where, he's just so popular with the ladies, and he has that other girl like in the bus jacking. So just him being such a ladies' man allows Misa's loyalty. Sure, Elle could still use Misa to some extent, and I think Misa says she finds him cute or whatever a little bit, but I think that would still, overall, that sort of ability to manipulate her and then even Takeda later, right, that would benefit Light more. Light, Elle might have a little bit of awkwardness or inability to do that, and in fact, this is part of Light's ideology here. Like, this is a line that I used on him in some discussion before. Light is like, he has this, they use some of this religious imagery, like in the opening and stuff, like where he's, whatever, he puts his arms out like he's on the cross or whatever, like he's a martyr. So he's like, there's a particular phrasing, I can't remember. Like, basically, Light sacrifices, money, a career that his intelligence would guarantee. He sacrifices women. He has no interest in them, really. Misa, Takeda, etc. Right? He has no interest in any of these areas. So he's giving all that up, and he's putting his life at risk to make the world a better place, reduce crime by 70%. So even if you want to say the God complex is a factor, the reality is this is what he's actually doing, right? He doesn't care about money, luxury, women, any of these sort of vices. So this is where he almost does make himself a godlike figure from a point of view, right? He doesn't care about money, women, sex, anything like that. You could say he has the 7 deadly sin. The one sin he has is pride, that he's very arrogant, but other than that, like, he's giving up so many of these other areas that even Al seems sort of weak to the sexual element a little bit, that he likes Misa or whatever too, but Light has no interest in that. So for him to see through that and not be affected by it, right, like, he's above all these worldly mortal desires, right? He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about anything. He's sacrificing his mind, body, soul, whatever he says, to right, make the world a better place. So that is a very elevated stance to, if you are going to pose yourself as this godlike figure, he doesn't seem to have interest. Even people hypothesize that he might be gay or something because of that. Like, how can he not care about any of this? But it seems more like he only cares about it in the context of how it's useful to him. So how did I end up before that page? I had done this one before. So yeah, the Misa interaction would be a +1. Let's see if we can't find a moment that would be a +1 for L, or even just any, whatever the next moment would be. The Yotsuba arc is sort of an equalizing factor for the fact that, again, without the notebook, Light is on L's level, so that wouldn't benefit either one. So it's not like, oh, imagine L with the Death Note, but imagine Light with the Death Note, because you have, obviously the ability to, what do you call it? Like, they're both equally deductively capable in that moment. Right, Light almost takes the lead in that. He's dealing with Namikawa, and he comes up with the link in the first place between Yotsuba and the notebook and, like, the killings. So he's at least as capable there. So I hate the fact that people would put them on any different level, because they'll say, oh, well, because of the notebook. But look at what they do without the notebook. It's almost showing you a what if scenario. Like, what would Light be like if he didn't get the notebook, or if he wasn't Kira? He would be one of the world's greatest detectives, on par with L. So you see him enact there. So acting skills wise, I think that probably would go to Light too. So let's recap on what we have. Confrontation, and this is all from L's perspective. So this is a +1. Naomi is a -1, right? Then Misa is a -1 as well, right? So now, also, just like acting in general could be a -1. So what are some things that could be a +1? He might come up with something. He might be sort of more low-key in some other way. I'm trying to think. Like, let's think, what's the next major event after Misa enters into the fray? It would be basically Misa gets imprisoned. That whole scenario, I'll give maybe a +1 here. When Light says, oh, I should have destroyed all the evidence of, like, the tapes and stuff. So I'll do, like, a little more careful. Not that Light isn't extremely careful, but I'll give him that. Like, so I should have destroyed the evidence, so maybe that would stop Misa from getting imprisoned in the first place, or he'd be a little bit a step ahead there. That's almost hard to believe that he would be, because that scenario is very complex, like where Misa's sending the tapes like a clown, and I don't even know if that should count, but whatever. No, I'm almost trying to give him a pity point. Let's not even do that. That scenario might be the same, so when they're in captivity like that, so it would be L and Misa in captivity, assuming that they were even in the relationship in the first place and all that. What would be something that he could do there? He might do the same thing, right? Similar plan with Ryu, get rid of the notebook. Let's say that's the only last resort option that they have. Now, would he come up with this crazy elaborate plan over the course of so many episodes, right, where he loses his memory and then he gets the notebook back and all of this? That might be pretty hard to believe. So that plan alone was insane. Like, I don't think the scale of that could be just that plan alone is too much. Right, and it does end up ultimately being his victory. Now, he was willing to test the notebook out and stuff like that at the end, so that almost forces Rem to do that. So there's one thing to do with the Rem that people misunderstand is, like, we can look at, like, L and Light lose to, again, either Rem, or you could blame, like, Mikami, right? So, oh, it's Rem's fault, or it's to Rem's credit that L dies, right? But it was Light's plan that he had set up. He was trying to get rid of Rem too, right? He created a scenario where Rem would have to do that. So, in other words, the only way to beat somebody like L would be some external outward factor that they wouldn't know about. They don't know that Rem is going to, try to protect Misa, or that Rem cares about Misa, or whatever. So you're using some external factor that they couldn't possibly know about, so he couldn't prepare for it. Even when he was about to say something when he's about to die. The Shinigami something is doing this killing, but even then he wouldn't necessarily know why he's doing it. He or she. I always thought Rem was portrayed almost like it is a female, but I don't even know what they actually officially would call it. they almost seem like they're beyond gender, but then Ryuk does say like, oh, I'm, what do you call it? I'm a guy. I get nervous sometimes, like when Misa is being flirtatious with him or something. But so again, oh, it's not Light's credit because Rem kills L for him, but he set up that scenario and that plan. So it's the same way that Mikami is to blame. Like, oh, Mikami fucked up and revealed the real notebook in the safe. If he didn't do that, you would have won because Light already killed Takeda, and so Mikami didn't have to do anything. Like how I've joked about that. Oh, Mikami could have just taken a shit. And that's the good ending of Death Note for Light. If he just takes his shit instead of watching the news report that Takeda has been kidnapped, he's in the bathroom and he misses it. He didn't have to do anything. And that's it, because that's all Light was expecting. The whole reason why Light kills Takeda with his little scrap of paper in his watch is so that Mikami wouldn't have to do that. So he was obviously expecting that he didn't do that. He just couldn't communicate that point to him. So again, it's not even like, oh, you blame Mikami, but because Light's so capable or L's so capable, L should have still been able to figure out what Rem was doing and somehow find a way out of it. And the same thing with that, like, oh, Light is so capable that he should have found a way to have a little code word for Mikami or have a way to test the notebook on the way there. That's what I always say, like, the same guy, this is that qualified intelligence thing that we were talking about, like, the same guy who put a pencil lead, that whole thing in the door just to see if somebody went in, you wouldn't have some sort of way to tell whether the safe's been opened, or you wouldn't have a way to tell whether the notebook's been tampered with at that point, or some way to test it, control somebody's actions, and then have them die like 10 days later, so it wouldn't be known to. And here's actually even the best way to say it. Maybe, oh, he doesn't want to use the notebook on the way because somebody could be watching him and he doesn't know, right? Even though they're really not, because they're all just at the meeting waiting. Right, so in that much time that everybody's at the meeting, he could easily test it. But let's say Mikami doesn't want to do anything out of the ordinary, so he doesn't write a name on the way so it doesn't stand out in case he's being watched. The one moment you know he can't be being watched is in the safe itself. Because if you're going into the safe deposit box to take out the real notebook, at this point, now you know, right, you're not being watched. Because if you were, then the whole jig is up and you're fucked. So at that point, this isn't when he's writing Takeda's name either. This is when he's like, taking the notebook for the meeting. Once you're in there, you could write somebody's name, right? Like a newscaster in 10 minutes will itch their nose very aggressively. And so now you know that that'll be your way to test it. Whereas, you know, you'll know that you control their actions successfully or whatever, and then they'll die later on. Put that they die at some later day. I forget how long you can wait. But then you would know, but then nobody else would know, and it wouldn't stand out. So you might say, oh, well, he doesn't want to write a name there because it might stand out to somebody. But again, if they're watching you there, you're already screwed because they would already know that, oh, he went to the safe deposit box to get a notebook. Or maybe, I don't know. But no, you don't think that pencil lead moment shows you that he would have some failsafe to know, like, oh, if at any point the safe is opened, the safe deposit box is open, you have like a little cue, right? There's a little piece of paper or some other way to just identify it. So this is why sort of these unconvincing defeats. I get to say the same thing like I talk about the Red John disappointing ending. Like, you don't get to build up a character for that long a part of the series and then say, well, they were so brilliant here and there, and then all of a sudden, oh, they just let their guard down, or that's why they lost, or oh, you know, they lost in a way that's not consistent. That moment would be, he would have 100% from the very beginning of that plan said, do this special thing that I did in my fucking room, have a piece of paper, have a little thing that nobody would notice, right? You have something, I don't know, you put something in there in your safe deposit box so that you would know, or put the death note at a very specific angle that you would know, or just something, some way of knowing that they wouldn't know, right? Or that they wouldn't be able to recreate, that would let you know that the safe's been open. So at least at that point, you already don't have the real notebook, but you at least wouldn't go to the meeting, like you've already kind of lost, because they would have taken the real notebook. But it wouldn't prove that Light's Kira then, because you wouldn't go to the meeting like a clown with the fake notebook and then write the names. So not only do you not test it, not only do you not have a fail-safe for the safe deposit box, not only do you not have any other contingency, like, it's not believable and it's not consistent with the character. Even if you blame Mikami there, it's still, well, the point of this was that it's still their fault. So they both lose to sort of external factors. You can't just beat them directly, right? Because they're just too capable for that. So then you say, oh no, you have to use Rem as leverage and trick her and manipulate her with Misa. And then you have to, you know, Nier and Mello working together have to exploit Mikami as the weak link in the situation to get to Light. There's no way you can just get to them directly because they're just simply too good. So that's sort of the devil's advocate way to explain that ending that a lot of people don't like, which I still don't really entirely like, but that's the best way to try to explain it. You can use those things as an excuse, like, oh, it's just because of Rem, it's just because of Mikami, but that's the only way that you were ever going to beat them, right? The only way that L was going to catch Light earlier potentially was through Misa, right? He wouldn't have just done it on its own. It's like everything was fine, and then Misa comes around and clowns it up. So he's using the weak link in the situation again, because you're just looking at it like these characters are too capable to be caught otherwise. So what is another element here that would be a factor? Okay, Light's plan, you have to give him credit for that, because I don't think L, I don't know, like whether he could do something that elaborate, but that is just so extreme that whether that factors into ruthlessness or anything like that. So far, most of this is favoring Light. I'm trying to think of what would be a moment that he would perform better in. The only one I could think of really was the confrontation. Most of these have to do with social skills. You could even say, like, again, ruthlessness. That, again, maybe L would put that on if he was in that situation, but I still think I'm giving him credit for being more mild-mannered, so that would help him in a situation like at the beginning, but over time that might hurt him as well. So what else? And he's not above the stimuli acme sort of thing of some temptations and things like that. Let's see. What is another moment? I'm just trying to trace back through major events. The Yotsuba arc is sort of an equalizing factor because, again, it would show you that they're on pretty equal footing regardless of having the notebook or not, so that shouldn't really matter. There's got to be something that would make sense that he would do better somewhere along the line here. Like, what is some maybe mistake? You know, I'll give him that credit then, the careful one, where it's like he's more careful. He might do a better job of stopping Misa from being imprisoned, or maybe handle that situation a little bit, but assuming it still goes down the same path. So then they both work together, like he loses his memory, and then they help catch the guy together. So that, again, wouldn't really matter one way or another. Because you're not holding it against them that, oh, what would they do without the notebook? They'd be fine without it. And then once you get your memories back, you would ultimately win that situation there. And I think that one could still happen. So then, like, let's say season 2, what would he do there? Maybe he wouldn't have gotten as complacent. Like, he would take on the role of L. What a shocking turn of events. L becomes L. But he would, you know, he would sort of lead the task force and do all that. And this is one mistake by Lights that almost is questioned. As much as you're saying he's ruthless, he doesn't kill Sayu or the task force members. And that's kind of a weird one, because why wouldn't he do that, right? Everybody's, like, nobody knew that Light was working with them anyway. Like, he just made some excuse to his parents or whatever. So he could have killed, after the death of L, he could have killed everybody. He could have killed his father. He could have killed the rest of the task force members. And then the Kira task force is just gone. I guess the reason why is to keep up appearances. Like, oh, L is still working to catch Kira, because if everyone winds up dead, right, and then he could still pose as L, I guess, but that would be a little harder to do, maybe, just to do it by himself. But the point is, that's what kind of comes back to bite him, to the sense that, like, oh, now they have all this information that they pass on to Nier, right? Like Aizawa does it, and so that ends up being like, you know, he just wouldn't have to deal with that. Or like, they're all suspicious of him. As soon as they hear he's suspected again by somebody else, now you're like, oh shit, he's been suspected twice. What are the chances? And now that ends up hurting you. Hey Nightmare, how's it going? So at this point, you're in a position where that is one big question. So he wants to keep up the appearance of L with those members to kind of keep that going. But there is a theoretical process that he could have just killed everybody and just been done with it. And then, like, it's over. Everybody's gone. So now they'll come up with a new investigator, or he could still maybe try to pose as L, but that, again, that might be difficult without some of these other resources, but maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Like, who's really going to stop him from doing that? But for whatever reason, he doesn't do that. But still, overall, I'd say he's more ruthless in general. So let me try to think of a few more moments. Maybe he'd deal with Mello a little better. Although I don't really see why, because Mello seems to really get under Light's skin, because he does things in sort of a spontaneous, unpredictable way that sort of catches Light off guard. right? So maybe as just pity points, I'll give him. Dealing with Mello, he might do a little better. He might be a little more composed. Light gets really pissed in that situation. Dealing with Nier actually favors Light, though. So both of these, I think this is Nier would actually give Al a really hard time, I think, because he's almost as smart as either of these characters, but he's like he does things in that same sort of dry way, right? Like it's very just to the point, matter of factly. So he's almost just meeting himself, and it's like I just feel like he wouldn't handle. So Mello throws off Light because he's so spontaneous. Nier would throw off L because he's so like just stonewall, just so flat, almost like there's nothing to really exploit. There's none of that ego that Light has or anything like that. Yeah, for whatever reason, I'm just doing my. Yeah, who the fuck is that guy? Doggy hype. Yeah, I'm just doing like random topics. So for some reason, I want to talk about this. So this is like, what if L had the Death Note? So he would be +1 there, then -3. So he's -2, -3, -4, -5, -5. So he's -3. Right, so he's more careful in some situations. But yeah, what about Nier specifically? Like he's just I don't know. I feel like that would give him trouble because he's so just composed and unemotional and all of that. Whereas Light is very good at dealing with that, the same way that he was good at dealing with Al because he predicts exactly what Nier is going to do, basically, with the notebook, and he plays him so well. But no, you see how bothered he is by Mello all the time. He's super fucking pissed. There's like some hypothetical ending you could say, like where Light, like let's say Mello survives, and doesn't die in the Takeda episode, then he could, like, the meeting could go as planned. It could be like the opposite of how it actually ends. The meeting happens and Light kills everybody, like in the episode 37, but then Mello's still alive, and then he comes and just shoots Light. He just kills him because he knows there's no way to catch him otherwise. So he just gives up trying to catch him, and just somehow he finds out where the meeting is from that girl, Hal Lidner, leaks it to him. And so that would be like sort of a sad, more ambiguous ending, that like he kills Nier and everybody, and he even somehow kills Mello too, like let's say, but then Mello in like his last act would just kill Light and just give up trying to catch him, because that would be sort of the wild card that he wouldn't be expecting. So that would be the only way to show like it's impossible to catch Light, you just have to fucking kill him, and that's just Mello's way of doing things. So in other words, Nier would basically sacrifice himself and die at the meeting to let Mello know somehow that this is Kira, and then he would just kill him. Right? It would be the inverse of what actually happens when Mello dies. And so what other points are there here? He would deal with that, and then I'm just trying to think like season 2 events that would favor, again, dealing with Takeda. This is where Light just sort of sweeps over, though. I guess we've already given him credit for Misa, but yeah, just dealing with all these characters, even dealing with Mikami, or no, it would be a minus, because dealing with that, I guess I'll consider that like just 1 point, though. Dealing with Takeda and Mikami, or not even really. I think L could deal with Mikami just fine, but he probably couldn't deal with Takeda as well, right? This whole, or maybe he could. I don't know, but just his social skills are so much more impressive sometimes. So dealing with that is better, right? And then what else happens in there? That whole plan, again, setting up the thing against Nier is good. What else? Light's plan at the end, again, I'll leave that one at an even, because presumably Al could do something similar to that, or again, he would maybe get rid of Mello a little bit earlier, right? I think he would deal with Mello a lot better. What else? There's no other real major event. Oh, here's a +1, like that final sequence. This is a perfect example, actually, of what this shows you. He wouldn't brag, right? So that when he says, well, Nier, looks like I win, he wouldn't do that. So even if he lost in that plan, where like, oh, Mello sacrifices himself, and then, you know, the real notebook is in the SPK's possession, he might get away with it at the end there, because, you know, he's like, he won't say, well, Nier, looks like I win. That's not L's style of doing things. He'd be more composed. So that element, maybe he could still squirm his way out of getting caught somehow, even if And that's another point with the ending, like to say it's so bad. Like you wouldn't have a way to check whether the safe had been open, like the way he checked that his door had been open, but also you wouldn't have like a little piece of the notebook like up your rectum that you could take out. And it might sound extreme, but like this is like the last final meeting. So you have a piece in your watch, but you have one up your rectum, so they won't search that. And then when you're running away and Ryuk ends up killing you, then you pull that out and kill everybody. Like there's so many things that, or you have like the Kimberly effect where you swallow it and then you can regurgitate it out, right? Something like that. Like there's so many things that he could have done that's like disqualifying, and you might think that's extreme, but this is an extreme character who's done so many crazy things over the course. Like he writes Higuchi's name in front of the world's greatest detective in the fucking helicopter. Did you Google a list? No, I'm just kind of going by my memory and trying to sort of say like which they would be better or worse at. So that brag is definitely favoring L because he wouldn't do that kind of moment. So I think that's about all the events you can really speak to. So if we look at the final count, it's going to be he gets +1 point for the confrontation where he wouldn't funk that up by exposing himself there. Which again, these events might alter the course of the series, but assuming whatever, they're still on his tail, assuming the events still happen, he would fail in the Naomi thing, and I think this is almost where he could just get caught, right? Even giving him the benefit of the doubt that that scenario might not happen quite the same way. The fact of the matter is, he would lose to a moment like this because he just can't get her. That's such a hard moment. That's actually when I almost became a fan of Light at that point, because it's such an impressive thing that you get somebody so guarded and so, you know, grieving over the death of their fiance and all this kind of stuff. Somebody who normally wouldn't just give you something like their name when they're already being careful. For him to go through all that mental gymnastics and social interaction to be able to do that, that would be the moment. I just can't picture Al doing that. He gets -1 for, again, this is all like social skills. This is the plan, obviously, where he ends up killing L. So what is the ultimate tally? It's these equalize each other out. So you're -2, -3, -4, -5. So you're -3, and then you're -3. So if you do this in the 1v1 style, it's like Light wins high difficulty with a -3 count. Right, those little fucking shorts that I always make fun of, or they are kind of cool, but it's just they put like a picture of each one and like, oh, they're better in this stat or that stat. So he's winning in the context as his performance as Kira, basically, because he has, you know, whatever those elements, ruthlessness and some of his consistency there. The main advantage that L is being shown to have here is just like an emotional level, that you're able to not expose yourself so much. Like bragging and stuff like that. Even he does it to Naomi, but that's why it's kind of hard to criticize that, because it normally doesn't get him in trouble or get him caught. And even at the end, it's not the reason he gets caught. Like, you know, the plan had already fucked up, right? He already wouldn't have had the real notebook. So even if he didn't say that and they might be less suspicious, it's still a very difficult spot for him nonetheless. So yeah, I like that as a telltale sign of qualifying intelligence. Let's give it a diagram. This is a very important scene early on in the show, because what it does is it shows you that if he's willing to, like, this answers a lot of those questions that you would have in stories, right? This is a great writing technique. You show something early on that would address all the audience's questions, like, oh, why couldn't you catch this criminal just by doing this hypothetical thing or that hypothetical thing? What if you just come through his window instead of his door? Like, he must have had a failsafe for that too. So the simple fact of you showing by him simply opening his door, he has the piece of paper, he has the pencil lead, he has the door hinge at a certain angle. That answers so many questions, like, wow, you're not going to be able to catch this guy ever in any conventional way, because he's always going to have a plan for every little thing. And if he's that careful about something as mundane as simply opening his door, right, imagine what else he has. So even if you don't always see what those plans are, it's like, wow, he thinks of everything. So now that qualifies his intelligence for the rest of the story. Like, now a lot of those questions are answered. So that's arguably the most important scene in the whole show, because it shows you, I don't know, just that you're so careful in that one element. So now it answers those, oh, what if this, what if I just did that? Nothing's going to work, because every little thing is going to be that well guarded. Let's do another topic here. I don't know why it comes back to anime somehow. You'd make you think I'm a fan of anime, but actually I've seen so few. But the ones that I have seen, we have discussed over the years, I guess, in certain. It's a fun sort of topic to debate. It's almost like sports. I don't even necessarily like sports or like the NBA in particular, but somehow I always just got into debating it because people have so many fallacies and so many. There's so many good things just to debate in there. It can be interesting. They should almost just do like a proper full short story at some point. This is the one that I wanted to do, like correcting the ending of the Mentalist. So like spoilers for the Mentalist, I guess, but it doesn't really even matter. I don't even have to say his name of who Red John ultimately is. I could just do it like so. Like, why is it called that? Because the whole premise of it, I won't maybe do the whole thing, but the whole premise would be that the meeting at the church happens and Jane dies, right? So this is almost the way to fix the ending. Instead of Jane winning because of a stupid fucking pigeon, he ends up actually dying there. Red John kills him, puts the bodies together, Bertram and whatever, Jane, right? And then that's it. It's over. So then later on, Lisbon and the team come in and they see that. And so now here's the one trump card that Jane had up his sleeve. He had the pigeon in his pocket or whatever, and Lisbon sees this. So now this is where the title comes from. Now she thinks like, why the hell would he have a pigeon? But now in this moment of shock and grief, she thinks like him for a second in his wild, zany way that he, thinks very unusual ways. That she thinks back because she was there when McAllister was. Oh, I guess I just said it, but whatever. When Red John was on the top of the roof and he's scared of the bird, he thinks, oh, Jane probably thought of that, and so therefore he must have thought that McAllister was Red John, and so therefore now I know, and now the whole team working together sort of takes a little piece of Jane's way of thinking. So in other words, it shows you. Then they would work together and try to catch him, and finally the team collectively, after Jane's death and sacrifice, with that upper hand clue that Jane had to die to give them. Basically, Red John doesn't notice the pigeon; he just kills Jane and then throws the body there, but the pigeon is still there. So that was Jane's best attempt to get him, but it didn't work because Red John's not a complete clown like how they portray him in the fucking show, where he's just, I'll take the breadcrumbs and whatever. That doesn't happen. So he actually dies, and then the team together work together to try to catch Red John. And the whole characterization here is that over the course of all those 6 seasons working together, right, the team has improved so much and learned so much from Jane that now they're actually capable of doing that, whereas normally they would have no chance. So even Red John would underestimate them a bit, like, oh, these clowns could never catch me. Like, he couldn't even catch me with Jane's help. But they sort of channel and try to start acting like him and thinking like him with all the lessons and gambits and tricks that they've learned from him over the years, right? That influence collectively is what helps them ultimately somehow track down McAllister, because now they know it's him, right? Even though he's faked his death, and realistically they wouldn't be able to still catch him, but if you had to do it like that, I would have still preferred that. So that would have been a more brave sort of ending, that wow, even here Jane couldn't beat him, and then it took all this kind of collective effort of the group to try to catch him. And again, it would be believable because on their own, no, they could never catch him, but with all the influence and everything over the years, they sort of start to realize, like, okay, we're going to try to emulate him and all the lessons he's taught us and everything like that. And so some of the key characterizations are Lisbon becomes a bit of a bitch, like the elitist victim blamer. She gets really mad and passive aggressive. And I think I wrote it. I think I wrote a little short version of this. Like, this is like a little fanfic thing. Passive aggressive, I think especially towards Grace. I forget exactly why. Right, she starts taking out her anger because she's obviously grieving over Jane's death, and so she gets really pissy at Grace for whatever reason, just because she's the youngest member. She makes fun of the fact that, oh yeah, you're so perceptive that you didn't even notice the fucking mole that you're having a relationship with in season 3, right? And all these kind of things, like just clowning Grace all the time. And so she gets really mad and mean when she's normally not like that, just because she's mad obviously over this death. And then what else? So Grace becomes sort of the punching bag, and then they lose their jobs or they quit their jobs, and then they work outside the law because whatever, like with the mystique of Jane gone, now the CBI falls off, or they're all depressed about it, so they all quit and they work together out of somebody's home, like Lisbon's home, and they kind of create this de facto, CBI that in their own, that they try to do a vigilante style. And part of the reason maybe why they have to do that is because they are going to do it outside the law and not be held back by it anymore, because they realize that's Red John's big advantage. He exploits that, and now he won't be able to get police information because we're not going to be with the police anymore, and when we find him, we're just going to kill him the way that Jane wanted, and so therefore, whatever. It's like it's easier to do it outside the police, and possibly they could get fired for some various reason. Which that happens anyway, I think, in that season. I didn't even watch the end of the show, because after that, like season 6, episode 8, right, it was so disappointing that you just like stopped watching there. But it ended in like the 7th season anyway, I think. But no, I could also dissect like why that ending is so bad. But it's the same sort of qualified intelligence argument that like this is a genius character, right, who's been around for 6 seasons, a mastermind character, right? And think about the mistakes that he makes in the scene. The way that you could do this actually in the form of React content isn't to watch the video, because I hate to show that, like show any scenes or anything, but I guess that you could like screen capture a few images of it and show those or something like that, right? Just to say. But like what all does he do in the church? Okay, he's there. Right, so you search. This is like, just think, this is a very super smart character, right, who's done very impressive things over the course of the series. But now all of a sudden you throw all that shit out the window just because you have to wrap it up. You have to have him be beaten. Deus Ex Machina garbage. So you search the person, right? And so somehow he doesn't even search it himself, but he has Oscar or whatever, his associate, search him. So you search him, you find the gun. Right, but you don't find the pigeon, whatever. He's something of a magician, so he can hide the pigeon fine. Why it would be easier to do that than somehow hide a gun in a similar fashion, I don't know, but whatever. So you have the pigeon and the breadcrumbs. Either Oscar didn't think they were worth noting, especially the breadcrumbs you probably would have found, or somehow the the pigeon is like, he's hiding it in a certain way, right? Okay, somehow. So those things are missed. That's okay. But the one thing he didn't do, and again, this is inconsistent with his whole character throughout the series, search the church, or rather even determine the meeting place, right? So he lets Jane determine the meeting place, which itself you wouldn't necessarily do. No, you'll say you'll meet on my terms, but one of two things. Either you would meet where you want to meet, and you determine the meeting place, not him, so you can control it easier and watch who goes in and out and everything, or you would search the church like once you're there ahead of time. Oscar's there, you're there, Bertram's there, and then you what do you call it, he arrives later, so he's completely at your mercy there. So it feels very much like not an earned victory, because you could have just searched that. You would have found the gun on the little banister thing there, or whatever, on the bottom of the seats. So that's very out of character that you wouldn't do that. Like, what if it was a camera instead? So he has a camera and it would show the whole thing, and then the police would know. I guess it wouldn't matter because he would still get away and he doesn't give a shit. But like, it's just so stupid that like you wouldn't know that that's there. So that means you didn't search the place even though he determined it and you let him do that. So you're kind of giving him more leash than even normal of what he does in the series. And then what else would you do that's uncharacteristic? Puts fingerprints on, whatever, church objects, right? He's touching the seats, he's touching the thing at the front. So now you're putting the fingerprints of a dead man that you faked your own death. You went through all that trouble to do. You're not wearing gloves. So that makes no sense either. Like, you're a serial killer and you've done this for a long time. You're not wearing gloves. You're putting the fingerprints of a dead man all over the place. Like, sure, maybe you don't care at this point. You're just so overconfident. You're about to kill Jane, so nobody's a threat for me, so I can get away with it. But it's still within your characterization. He should just be wearing gloves there. He should just not be touching all the stuff all around. He's like leaning on the chair because this is an old man, fucking unimpressive in form. And so he's putting his fingerprints everywhere. All these things are just inconsistent with the character, and I guarantee you they didn't put this much thought into writing it as what a viewer or myself would be putting in. And then finally, this is the worst offense of all: no arsenal. Now, again, this isn't like romanticizing the character either, like, oh, he would have all these crazy gadgets, but he's shown it like he should have a taser, he should have a knife. Like, these are all things that he's shown as using throughout the series. He would have like rope and things to restrain somebody with, which he could do, before he even goes on his little spiel of trying to show off and whatever, right? So he has none of those things, and the reason why this is so bad is because only a few episodes prior, he was in a more innocuous meeting, like, oh, he's meeting with all the suspects, right? And he's one of them. Think about all the preparation he does, right? This is not even like some ancient episode that you see from an earlier season. His prep for a meeting, right, where he's only a suspect is as follows. He has body with which DNA in trunk, right? So he's able to fake his own death and put that body there. He had switched it, whatever, Brett Partridge did it for him. So he has that to fake his own death. Then he has a concussion bomb to knock everybody out. And then he has a lethal bomb to kill them once they're knocked out. And now if you think about that, this is what he brings to just a meeting where he's only a suspect. But what does he do now when he's as actual Red John, as he's revealed himself now, like no holds barred, right? He comes to the church. What is his prep? One pistol. That's it. Done. Nothing else. He has nothing else. And you might say, oh, well, he's trying to avoid. Like, it's so retardedly inconsistent that you can't even make sense of it. You don't have a knife. That's how you normally kill people, with a knife. Maybe he wanted to cut Jane up or something as his final, act to humiliate him or whatever. But, like, you have this one dinky fucking pistol, nothing else. And you might say, oh, well, he's doing it because he's trying to be incognito and low profile. But, like, he's not going to go to an airport. He's not going to be searched by police. You know why? Because he's faked his own death, meaning he's not even supposed to be alive. So nobody should be seeing him. He's probably, living in the shadows, living underground, having Oscar drive him around with tinted windows, whatever he's doing. So, like, one pistol and apparently no escape plan, because then he runs on foot. So it's so... makes no sense. Like, even, okay, Oscar is dead, but what about the car? Didn't you come in a car? So go drive in the car. You don't have any escape plan. You run on the street. You don't have any gadgets or tricks up your sleeve. You were just completely... You were satisfied. I'll bring one little pistol, and if it jams, I guess I'm screwed. I guess I lose. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, throughout the whole rest of the series, even a few episodes before, this is the biggest affront of all. You wouldn't have anything else on your person, and you can have as much as you want, because, again, you faked your own death, and so nobody's looking for you, or nobody even knows you're alive or where you are. So why wouldn't you have? And this is like your final form, where you're actually the serial killer, sort of not exposed, but you don't have anything to hide, because if a cop pulls you over, they'll be like, oh, you're a dead man. Why are you, why are you even alive? You go to an airport security. Oh, why are you, we found a dead man. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So you'd be hiding your identity anyway. You're living in the shadows, so you can have as many weapons as you want. So it makes absolutely no sense that you would have that. So basically the principle at work in both of those scenarios, like we were just talking about Death Note, is you want to see them at their best be beaten then. But the problem is, this is what happens, is that you create like a larger than life villain that's like too good to be beaten believably. So now you either have to use like a Deus Ex Machina to beat them, or the way that you beat them, you have to reduce them to a lesser state, right? So beating Light Yagami or Red John in any scenario is like, it would take a really, really crazy, elaborate, super smart plan that neither one really gets beaten by, or it just takes some other bullshit. You have to reduce them. Oh, they're just arrogant. Oh, they're just a man. Oh, you have to justify it somehow, inconsistent with their character the rest of the series. Or again, some Deus Ex Machina that just doesn't fit. So that's why those are two of the most disappointing villain defeats in all of fiction history. And what else do we have here? Let's do another subject. But no, that's a short story that I should write out like in great detail. And it's not even like, oh, you're plagiarizing, because it's like a fanfic thing. It's not like I'm really taking credit for it. It's just some hypothetical thing. So I don't think there would be an issue with it. What else? Let me do... Actually, let's do this since we just discussed those two subjects. Kira versus Red John now, instead of Kira versus Al. This is like, oh, you know what this could be a fun format as? You like compare characters, and then whichever one wins of the two, then you compare them to somebody else, right? And then you keep going. Like, you do a whole character like gauntlet of comparisons to see who comes out on top. So let's see who is better in this scenario. This is obviously Light versus McAllister here. So like, they're both very highly capable villains, serial killers, criminals, whatever. So here you have the supernatural element, which I don't know whether that should be considered a positive or a negative. I guess I won't consider it either. It's not a negative because without the notebook, Light is still so smart that you see in the Yotsuba arc, right? So that's fine. And even the fact that he has a notebook is an equalizing factor, because I'm not going to penalize you like, oh, you just don't have the notebook, right? Like, that's not to his credit. He just happens to have it. But so I'm going mostly by his intelligence, but he does have the resource, at least having the Death Note. So what's more impressive for him is that he does it in the real world, which means he's able to kill so many people, right, and create the Blake Association and do all these different things, but he's able to do it for real. So regardless of how smart Light is, for Red John to be able to physically do that, even though he's not killing nearly as many people, I guess that's the one difference that maybe should equalize it, I'll still give him a +1, because that's unbelievably impressive and hard to do, that you're actually able to get away with these things in real life, right? So well, like, it's in real life for both in both universes, but still, without the notebook, it's not that, oh, he relies on the notebook, because what he does with it is so above and beyond and impressive, but the fact that he's still able to do this, right, manually. So I'll give him a plus for that. He also, like, charisma would be like sort of equal, right? This is like that character stats things, because Light is incredibly charismatic, he's popular, friends. I guess the one thing that Red John gets, though, is the Blake Association, because his infrastructure is way more impressive. All these people, Dumar and Rosalind Harker and everybody who's so impressed by him, this is like only a few, right? Like Mikami and Misa and stuff like that. It's not quite as impressive. So you get a +1 definitely for that. Right, so he's actually going to sweep him out here, and he's winning pretty handily. Right, it's more impressive that what you're doing is in a real-world setting without the advantage of having the notebook, even though, again, I would qualify that a little bit by just saying what he does with the notebook is also, relative to its scale and complexity. Like, you're reducing world-around crime by 70%, regardless of your intent, and, like, it being more noble or whatever, right? That doesn't even factor in. It's just, he's kind of like, what do you call it? You're doing more with it, so even though you are doing that in person, so that almost shouldn't count, but I still will, because there's a certain consideration with that, like, even his willingness to do it, again, even if it's for negative reasons, it's like, Light without the notebook didn't do anything, right? Like, he might have been really smart, but he didn't do anything at all. Whether, again, he could have dressed up as a vigilante and gone out at night and killed criminals or whatever. So since he doesn't do that, at least, that's effectively what you're talking about, is that somebody's so smart that they can do that and get away with it. Now, I guess his opposition, no, I mean, Jane is a reasonable foil to that. Like, he might not be Al, but he's still extremely smart to try to catch you, but I guess that's a fair comparison. So the charisma part is pretty much equal, but the infrastructure element definitely goes to him. What else do we have? Because he's the one who creates it and has this charisma, and everybody's so obsessed and impressed with him. So what other elements? You could look at, like, their feats. Like, he beats L, right, within the game theory, regardless of you want to say how. Red John doesn't really beat Jane, but I mean, I don't know, like, maybe his feats aren't quite as impressive, so I will give it to you there. At least he beat somebody like that. But again, you almost think in a normal story, the villain can't beat the hero, so that's almost unfair. Like, you're not supposed to be able to beat them. Or he tricks him into killing his stand-in in season 3, so that almost works better. Like, that almost counts as a victory. Like, you would have put the guy in jail, but then they kind of just ignore that because they just want to extend the series arbitrarily. What would be another point? So that's the first plus for him. What are some other elements here? They're both extremely careful, right? You can't really hold their defeats against them because they're both kind of bullshit. So that's the one thing they have in common. So I won't really count that against them. Charisma's good. They're both very smart. They're both very careful. This is basically like a physical thing, right? Not that matters too much for Light, but it has to be at least an attribute that, like, physically you're somehow able to do things that Light just either couldn't do or wouldn't be willing to do, even though it is like an older man that we're talking about somehow, right? Just the feats that way are very impressive. So I almost can't think of another element here. What would be some of these things? Like battle IQ, but it doesn't matter because, so again, assuming that the identity would be unknown, so like, you couldn't just kill Red John with a notebook because you wouldn't know who Red John is, and you couldn't kill Light because you wouldn't know who Kira is, right? So assuming that would be fair, because otherwise it wouldn't be. But that's the one thing that that Red John could do. He could just come in Light's house and kill him in his sleep or whatever, and it's like, I don't know, like if he, well, he would still have to find out who he is, so it wouldn't matter. He'd have to do it in like a more hands-on way. But that's the one thing he can do to Jane at any time. See, that's why he gives Jane way too much leash. It's like the similar battle of wits where they're trying to catch each other or whatever, but he could kill Jane anytime he wants, right? There's nothing stopping him from doing that. So I don't really get how you can say that, where, you know, it's not really a true victory for somebody when he not only does that, but he saves your life multiple times. So it's not quite the same game theory as Death Note, where the two characters are actually trying to catch each other to the best of their ability, right? That's what actually works so well about that writing, is that nobody's holding back like, oh, I'm just playing with you. No, you're actually trying to, even as arrogant as Light is, he's actually trying to, you know, kill L to the best of his ability. He doesn't hold back just to humiliate him or have fun with him or something. He's actually just being as efficient as possible, trying to get away, trying to kill him, trying to win, right? So that's the better way to write it, instead of, oh, I'm just toying with you until I eventually lose, even though I could have won at any point that I wanted. Right, so you're kind of controlling the rules of the game a little bit more, but even that I won't necessarily count. Or it kind of is, though, because like toys with opponent, even though you might say Jane isn't as impressive as L, it still doesn't matter. Like, these two should equalize each other out, because yes, he beats L, but he, you know, he could have easily beaten Jane if he wanted, just kill Jane, right? So the circumstance is completely different, where, you know, as soon as Light has the opportunity to do it, he does it, whereas he's just toying with him for 6 seasons. So that should almost be an equalizing factor. Let's try to think of like maybe one more element, because a lot of them I'm just considering equal, so I'm not even writing them, like intelligence or creativity, all those kind of things. They're both highly capable in that regards. The infrastructure, again, that's a little bit better, and it's hard to say that somebody's actually more charismatic than Light. So overall, you would say mostly it's equal, but Red John does have those two pluses, right? The real world physical element and the Blake Association, again, charisma sort of byproduct. So what is the other last point? Like, I guess you could say Light does sort of take over the task force, but it doesn't feel as impressive to just do it in such a clandestine way. That even with the help of the notebook, the following that he could theoretically create, like, oh, Mikumi's loyal to him because of that, and they view him as like a god, he still doesn't create an infrastructure quite as impressive. So, I mean, I guess it would be, yeah, you could totally turn these into those little 1v1 videos. So he would win on like high, or no, it would be extreme difficulty still. Which seems hard to believe, because you think what Kira is doing so impressive, but then you put it in the context of, again, you're not holding the notebook against him, but you're at least putting in perspective that that's part of what enables him to do what he does and everything like that. So what other topics can we do here? We'll just keep doing these random anime, TV show related subjects just because that's lowest common denominator. What else? Let's do, in honor of Akira Toriyama, let's do Dragon Ball power level criticism, topic that we talked about before, right? So like, let's look at some of these crazy power jumps. Goku in his whole life, right? Life until Raditz, basically. Right, his power level was whatever. Like, he's weaker than Raditz up to that point. So through everything he's gone through, right, his power level is only at that point. So the problem with that is, like, all these Zenkai boosts and contrived mechanics that they come up with, right, to try to, just as a writing technique, none of that, like, he gets near death against Piccolo, right, in Dragon Ball, and he gets beaten up pretty badly, even though I haven't even seen Dragon Ball, just whatever. You've seen those clips and those memes, like, you miss my vital organs. What, all of them? Like Piccolo says, so everybody loves that line. The point is that it's like, you know, none of that allowed you to even leapfrog fucking Raditz. So somehow you could say, oh, it's because you're just not fighting that strong opponents, but you're still getting near death. So then all of a sudden he's able to leapfrog everybody. So like we're sort of showing the work ethic of Vegeta. Vegeta works his whole life and he's far more powerful, like stronger than whatever, like Zarbon Dodoria level, or about the same. So he's at a very high level, like Ginyu Force, extras, member sort of thing, or like Kui or whatever. So he's up there, right? So now all of a sudden, Goku gets to leapfrog by like, okay, you go to King Kai's, and now you not only leapfrog like Raditz, but you go from being weaker than Raditz, to almost as strong as Vegeta. Right, you're still not really as strong. And in fact, that's one thing that's sort of misinterpreted. People act like, oh, even Vegeta says himself, oh, you beat me that one time on Earth and humiliated me, which shows you how high his standard is. But not only does he not beat him, but you have Krillin and Yajirobe and Gohan becomes a gorilla and all these kind of things. Like, clearly it's like a 4 or 5v1, right, in which Vegeta barely loses and is about to escape. So I love how that's taken as a credit. Like, oh yeah, Goku humiliated Vegeta and beat him. Also, Goku's lying on his back doing fuck all while Yajirobe cuts his tail and Gohan steps on him as a gorilla and Krillin hits him with a whatever, is about to stab him with a sword. Like, so in no way does Vegeta actually lose that fight at all, and he technically doesn't lose the other one later either. Or here's like a fun little fanfic thing, speaking of which, Super Saiyan 3 versus Majin Vegeta, right? Technically people say, and obviously the way it's written would imply that if Goku went Super Saiyan 3, he would have beaten Vegeta easily in that fight. But what you see with Vegeta is that he lasts so long against Kid Buu, even though Kid Buu is so much stronger, right? So Kid Buu is at least as strong as Super Saiyan 3, and sure, Vegeta might be a little stronger than he is in the Majin form, although I don't know how much, really. The point is that even though he's getting his ass beat by Kid Buu, he's able to last an extremely long amount of time and have endurance. So the cool interpretation here is he would go Super Saiyan 3, but you see how much he has to like recharge from it and how much it drains his energy and exhausts him. So in other words, Majin Vegeta could win that because he would outlast him because he's so durable. So it's almost like the Kid Buu thing. If he can last that fucking long against Kid Buu, even getting his ass beat for that long, right, he can outlast Super Saiyan 3 before Goku has to just recharge for like an hour like he did in that fight, where, again, he can only maintain it for so long. So there is actually some possibility that that could be true, even if he goes all out. So the reason why he doesn't do it, in a game theory sense, isn't just for some arbitrary, stupid writing reasons, that he knows he's smart enough to know that, oh, Vegeta is so durable that he's actually going to outlast me because this form only lasts so long. And so that's a good way to explain it, that no, that was actually the right way that he fought him. He's going all out because even though he has Super Saiyan 3, he's still not that much stronger. Or it's because he's Majin that makes him on his level still as Super Saiyan 2. But that's the way I kind of would like to explain a scene like that, even though it's not true, right? Like, oh no, he's just so durable that he would have outlasted me, so I had no choice but to fight it out in a longer form. But no, let's look at some other power leaps, like during the Android saga, or no, even Namek. Like, look at these 3 instances. He goes from, so King Kai goes from weaker than Raditz to stronger than Nappa, and almost, as strong as Vegeta, although you can't really say he is because whatever, he's still, and that's his durability that comes into play too. Think about the amount of shit that Vegeta endures in that fight. He gets the Kamehameha, he loses that beam struggle, and he gets shot out into fucking space. Then he comes back down. Then he gets stepped on or whatever, hit by Gohan as the gorilla. Then he gets stabbed by Yajirobe and through his armor, right? He gets hit by like a spirit bomb, maybe, I think, too. I don't even remember. It's like all these things, and he's still standing at the end of the fight, about to leave on his ship, whereas Goku's out for a much longer period of time. So that's one good characterization of him, is that he's so incredibly durable in so many of these fights. Oh, I'm just doing like random subjects like on different shows and stuff. I don't even know. I just kind of do random associative topics. So this is like all the bullshit power boosts that you get here. So he's weaker than Raditz and he's way stronger than Nab, but this is like a recurring plot device. So now later on, like on his way to Namek, right? So this would be after, basically just after that Saiyan saga. So he's still weaker than Vegeta, right? To now he leapfrogs, like he does this stupid thing on like the ship, right? Where he's like weaker than Vegeta on his way to Namek, right? and something on that ship is so well designed that he can train on there, and that suddenly now he leapfrogs everybody, and he's apparently like stronger than Ginyu, I think, already. I think, right? Because he goes and he beats the Ginyu Force members, and then he ends up in the hospital or whatever. He ends up recovering only because Ginyu switches bodies with him, and he's all fucked up because of that, I think. So then when he comes, this is what's so stupid about it. Then he goes in the recovery phase before he comes out to fight Frieza. So he's way weaker than Frieza, I guess. I don't know how you would actually measure it. To, I guess, still being way weaker than Frieza. Like this one maybe, but like all he's doing in a lot of these instances is like he goes in a fucking recovery chamber and then he comes out and he's magically even stronger than he was before, right? Some of these wild jumps that happen. Do you support the LG as in let's get biryani tonight? Yeah, sure. And maybe the other one too. Recovery. So yeah, he goes in the recovery chamber and then he leapfrogs even more. And then what's another instance? At least the Super Saiyan thing is like, okay, that's the least. He's not strong enough, and then he has to do that to actually be able to beat Frieza. But like in the Android Saga, right? He goes from, it's just such a recurring principle, and it always, this is what you call plot armor, right? He goes from weaker than 17 and 18 because he loses to 19, but technically he's stronger or whatever, just he's having the heart attack. But they say even in the thing, like, oh, Vegeta is at least as strong as Goku now, and then Vegeta gets his ass beat by 17 and 18. So he's weaker than 17 and 18. So then he's in bed, and then when he gets out of bed, or he goes in the time chamber once, right? One time. So now what happens is he leapfrogs. He goes from being weaker than 17 and 18, and in one stint in the time chamber, he leapfrogs 17 and 18, he leapfrogs imperfect cell, he leapfrogs semi-perfect cell, and now he's already fucking on perfect cell's level almost. So just compared to the amount of work that the other characters have to put in, he's in bed the whole time, he goes in the chamber once, and he's already there. Like, that's such bullshit compared to what the other characters have to do. Even Vegeta goes in the chamber twice, right? And then he's still, in that second time, I guess he doesn't really accomplish a whole lot because he goes from being stronger than semi-perfect cell to still being weaker than perfect cell. So he's already there. But at least it feels more gradual with those. And then there's probably another instance. Oh, why gloves? Just because I'm a Michael Jackson role player. Or no, I guess whatever. It's the same reason like I don't like to do face cam. Like I just like it to be as much like separated from the self as possible. Like I'm just some random disembodied arm. It doesn't matter really, it's just more about what you're doing than what you look like or anything. So let's see, what is another good topic? I don't know, I just come in without any real plan and then I just discuss random stuff. Yeah, there's so many of those bullshit power jump moments, for sure. I think that one's one of the most blatant ones. You go weaker than 17 and 18, which is towards the beginning of the saga, right? So that's like then you skip ahead, imperfect cell stronger, then semi-perfect cell is much stronger. And of course, you could say the same thing happens to Gohan too. Like he goes from being weaker than everybody to, oh, now he's in one stint in the time chamber, he goes through not only becoming Super Saiyan 1, but also Super Saiyan 2, right? Effectively, like he's almost at that level because he still has to transform, but he's like ahead of even Goku at that point somehow. So it's just the leapfrog element that it's already a plot device that you go in the time chamber, but now it's even worse because you get to, in one stint, you're able to just bypass everybody just because the plot requires it. I don't even know who that other one is. Is it from somebody from Super or some other show? Yeah, that is kind of a weird thing, though. The whole glove, but it's weird to do webcam even in the first place. Or what I would do is like a drawing stream if I was better at drawing, like something just to make use of this. Let me think, because I'm not even using it especially well. Like even if I'm doing this, it's just like I'm writing only a few things down. I should almost write like everything I'm saying, but that would be way too hard. Yeah, I don't know who is that. Let's see. Let me do like one more topic here. Maybe another term from the court of reason or something else. Let's see. Let's do actually what we're talking about itself, like why we talk about all these different, you know, lowest common denominator subjects. What is folly favoritism, right? Lowest common denominator. It's like a distraction, like any sort of entertainment, games, whatever, right? Distraction, escapism, no impact on your life. In other words, it's not important, it doesn't have any value, but yet you still focus on it. And in this day and age, people focus on it so much, even at the expense of something else. So it goes along with the superficiality, overcompensation, the idea that you're able to basically value non-impact things, like, for example, appearance, clothing, tattoos, piercings. These are all like identifiable. Music, hobbies, polyfavoritism, right? There's so much identity and personalization that comes from that. Like, oh, you feel like that gives you a sense of personality or defines you, but then you ignore, as if this is the compensation that you're doing, you ignore impact elements, like things that would actually affect your life, major issues, or actions that you could actually do that are significant. You would rather focus on these things, or again, that's to make you feel better. Like, I might not get to choose a lot of elements in my life that are actually important, economic, financial, geography, all these different things, but I do get to choose, oh, at least I have a sense of style. So you're almost overcompensating. You feel like you've achieved a certain choice or identity here, but then you're missing out on that. So it's almost a way to make yourself feel better. So if you have like a blank slate way of thinking about it, like, don't worry about the superficial elements at all, now you would almost feel more pressured, like, no, now I have to do something that actually has impact. One Punch Man, yeah, I've never seen that. I've never seen too many animes, actually, right? Which is interesting that I still end up debating them so much or talking about them so much. But yeah, I've only seen like maybe 10 ever, right? Like DBZ, I haven't even seen. GT, yeah, let me list it. What animes have I seen? All DBZ, then DBGT, and I should rank them too, like Death Note, Code Geass, at least that I've seen all the way. Then I've seen Neon Genesis, although I barely remember it. And then Cowboy Bebop. And then Darker Than Black. And then what else? Berserk, although also that some of these were a really long time ago, so I completely have forgotten about them. Basically, just a lot of the big name ones that everybody would have seen. FMA Brotherhood, then FMA 2003, which I always hold that one in very high regard. It's kind of been forgotten about and underappreciated. So that might be every single one actually that I've seen. So they're all pretty much very good. I haven't seen Naruto, Bleach, any of those really big mainstream ones. I saw a little bit of Monster, like the beginning of it, but then I kind of enjoyed the hospital drama a little bit at the beginning more than the actual what the main story was going to be about. Let me think if I'm missing one, actually. I've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Is that really all I've ever seen? Let me try to think. But yeah, and then of the ones I've seen, I've probably seen them multiple times, or I don't always watch them, but then when I do, I get like really in depth about them. So let me rank them now. So the top tier would be, I'll first do it by tiers, right? So Death Note is an A tier for sure. I won't even really count some, well, whatever. Neon Genesis, just for its impact, I have to give it credit. I'll put Darker Than Black in B. Berserk for Impact, Brotherhood. I'll put 2003 at a B. I'll even put DBZ at a B because it's like probably GT they should put lower. I'll put this at a B. So then of those you could rank them. So let's do all the A ones. So you got Death Note, Neon Genesis, Cowboy Bebop, Berserk. Or no, I'll exclude these two because honestly, like I said, I barely remember them. So I won't even worry about it. But you would have a Death Note and FMA. So I guess I'll put that above it, right? So this would be the A's. Then you have, this is like the tier list I did a couple weeks ago, but I guess that had an S on it too. Like an S tier, but whatever. But we're just like pushing everything down. Then you have Code ES, Dragon Ball Z, Darker Than Black, and FMA 2003. We could do, let's say Code ES, DBZ, Darker Than Black will go probably last because even though I like it, I get why it wouldn't hold up as well. Or actually, FMA 2003 probably could be switched with that too, but whatever, it's up there anyway. But I was almost saying that. You know what? No, I actually disagree. I should put it F here. Like it's so close to the other series that I would almost put it there. You got Death Note, FMA 2003, Code Geass, DBZ, Darker Than Black, and then the C tier would just be GT. Which the one good redeeming quality of GT is it was so fast paced. This is what Kai should have been. Like it's 60 something episodes and it goes through so many different sagas. The Shadow Dragons, Android 17, it goes through the Rildo, whatever that is. It goes through, something else I can't even remember. Like it goes through a lot of different content very quickly. So even if it's not good, Baby Vegeta, even if it's not good, it's really well paced. And again, that's not what Kai even does. Kai ends up missing the boat. So GT is literally Kai, and it's sort of, none of the fights really drag out too much. Even the final fight is a little bit long, but I mean, that's the whole point. Like, that's the final fight of the whole series, so I can understand that. But I just remember, like, none of those fights are really that bad with how they pace them. You got Super Android 17. I'm trying to think what other minor villains were in there. Baby Vegeta, Android 17, Rildo is kind of just part of some other overarching thing to do with the Shadow Dragons and collecting the thing. And at least it addresses the namesake of the series. It's actually about the Dragon Balls in some, bigger scale way. So I do kind of like that. It comes full circle. In fact, that feels like the true ending of the series. Like the Dragon Balls come back to bite you and haunt you. And so, it at least lives up to the namesake. So I don't even hate GT as much as people do, but I get it. But no, I mean, maybe Super is worse. I've never seen that. So I think that's all the ones I've seen. Let me do, like, which TV shows have I seen that ever, like, in full? Original, I forget even the year of it. Twilight Zone. And then, obviously, I'll count The Mentalist, even though, like I said, I didn't see the very ending of it. And then what else? If I've seen a substantial amount, I'll count it. Psych, which is what The Mentalist copied, actually, in terms of its premise and all that. And then Alfred Hitchcock Presents, obviously, is one. That might be about it. Seinfeld. I think I probably have seen every single episode, even though it's like sporadic and over the years, and a lot of it's on TV. But effectively, I've seen maybe the full thing, or maybe I've seen, again, the majority of most of these. So what else have I seen in any? That might be it. Like, I'm not really much of a TV show person. I've seen like a ridiculous amount of movies, obviously, but used to even review them. The original Twilight Zone, Mentalist, Psych, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Seinfeld. That might actually be it. I cannot think. I saw a lot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air actually as a kid. Again, probably not every single episode, but, or you know what? I forgot to put on here. How could I forget? Is actually Yu-Gi-Oh! And I will put it on the very bottom because even though I like some of the characterizations and stuff, it is a show about a card game, or maybe I should just put it above GT because that would be the ultimate insult. It's almost embarrassing that you block it out of your memory that you saw a show that's 200 episodes plus about a card game. What else? Or I actually did see Pokemon too, because as a kid I saw a lot of that, so that would be probably somewhere in this here as well, which maybe people would take issues with. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, a lot of them are going to turn out to be sitcoms, because even though I didn't really watch them. They're sometimes in the background, or my dad would always watch them, so I'd always end up seeing them that way. What else? What else? Friends, I don't think I've seen really that much of it, but I guess I can count it like I've seen enough. Now, if we were to rank these, let's see, Twilight Zone could be, I would put it as an A, but I'll actually put it as a B because it's such a hit or miss. Some of the episodes are masterpieces like Monsters Due on Maple Street that would almost have the content quality of a movie if you could turn it into one. But then it's either hit or miss. Some of them are garbage, some of them are great. So that's their Mentalist would be B also because even though it's really good, the ending and certain aspects of it suck and they kind of drag it out way too long. Psych is going to also be a B. It's very good. Good comedy element. It doesn't have some of the drama of the Mentalist, comparing them just because it obviously Mentalist copied it, but it doesn't have the drama. It doesn't have the sort of serious element, but it's still very, very good. Alfred Hitchcock Presents is very good, but I mean, I'll almost put it at a C because I don't know. I remember that's also hit or miss to an extent. Seinfeld almost could be an A just for its influence and everything. Right? It's hard to deny that. Bel Air's probably a B. I almost feel like How I Met Your Mother deserves an A because it's so, the writing style of it was so good sometimes, like where it goes above and beyond some of the tropes of sitcoms. I'll actually give that a high mark, even though again the ending and so forth people don't like. And then Friends I'll give a B. I always thought of Friends as like it's Seinfeld, but it's just kind of faker, even down to the camera. Like it feels like something's weird about it. Everybody just looks kind of too perfect to the point where it almost they don't even look as good there as they do in other things like Courtney Cox or Jennifer Aniston. There's just something weird about the lighting or something, like it's overdone. Either the lighting or the makeup, like they just overdo it where they don't feel like real people as much, and the humor is sometimes fake and forced like that. Although one thing I came to appreciate was both Phoebe and Kramer over the years. I hated those characters as a kid when I saw them, and then when I as I got older, I kind of appreciate at least the acting talent that goes into playing them because they are so crazy and off the wall and zany, but they're kind of characters that feel like they're trying too hard to be funny still, kind of a little bit, but certainly the performances are very good. So let's try to rank these. If you go, I guess Seinfeld just wins as far as number one. So what are the B tier? Pretty much everything. So the C tier goes at the bottom. It's not even that I dislike Alfred Hitchcock. Oh, wait, that's too high up. Alfred Hitchcock Presents, but I don't remember it being like that great either. It was just kind of okay. So you have that top and the bottom. You got original Twilight Zone, you got Mentalist, you got Psych. Oh, you got How I Met Your Mother, surprisingly, too. I don't know. There was something about the writing style of that was very well done. So you got Bel Air, you got Alfred, you got Psych, Mentalist, and that. So maybe Twilight Zone comes first, right? And then you got maybe Mentalist is very good. Psych should be kind of like right there with it. So Bel Air and Friends. I'm not really much a fan of Friends, actually, right? Oh, I should put it last. Like it's not bad, but I do think it's pretty overrated. So did we get all of them? Mentalist, Psych, Bel Air, Friends. Oh yeah, that is a super underrated series actually. Psych. Not a lot of people know about it, or again, they just blatantly plagiarized and copied the shit out of it with the premise at least of the Mentalist, because they're both like, oh, we're psychic detectives who are both pretending to be psychic, but we're actually not, and like whatever. It's too on the nose of the same thing. Yeah, that shows you how few of those sort of things I've ever seen. Or let me go through like my absolute favorite movies of all time, like my top 3, which have been pretty much consistently there for a while now. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be in a particular order, but The Truman Show is unbelievable because it succeeds on various levels. Like it's entertaining. It can be like an escapist, normal form of entertainment that did very well at the box office and people loved it on that level. But it also deals with so many deep themes, like it's satire on TV and reality television. It's also existential on society, like Sea Haven, where he lives and where the TV show is taking place, is almost an analogy for society itself. There's like religious themes where like Kristoff is looking down as the god of this little utopia that he's created, and there's just so many great images, like where he crashes the boat into the sky, like this Icarus sort of moment, or it's just such a ridiculous image. Like he crashed into the wall of the studio, which he thought was actually the sky, and that's this moment of revelation. And he's climbing up the stairs like to heaven as he's leaving, and so much great imagery. It's very well paced. It doesn't last too long. The performances are good. The characters are good. Like it is so unbelievably good. And again, it deals with these very high level themes without feeling sort of overly talky or pretentious or anything like that. And it's an original screenplay too. It's not based on anything, right? It's just a straight up, possibly the best screenplay ever written. It's dealing with high level themes in a natural, organic way. Right, as he slowly realizes that he's living in the TV show and all the contradictions and problems with it. He's having sort of a midlife crisis. Truman is sort of like the everyman in society, where he sort of represents the, the ordinary person who is looking for some other meaning in life. So that's part of the reason why he has an issue. The issue isn't the TV show, right? He's been living there his whole life and that didn't bother him, but now he's having almost like a midlife crisis that they can't explain. And so he wants to go to Fiji. That doesn't have to do with him being on a TV show. That would have to do with him living in a local environment his whole life, right? You're just going to live there and die there your whole life. You want some adventure. You want to go somewhere that you haven't been before, stuff like that. So it's like this quest of the human spirit that sort of transcends even what people maybe think it's about, where it's like, oh, it's just a TV show, satire on that, which was ahead of his time even there. But it's something much beyond that, where you can look at it kind of like, how did I describe it? Like, forget about the TV show element. It's analogizing this to real life. Like you're born in a town, you live there your whole life, you meet your wife there, you have kids, you have your white picket fence. Everything is sort of on rails and controlled for you, right? And it's all just reactive. You get to choose a little bit within that context, but only within what's set in stone for you, right? So that creates a major conflict for people, where they're always trying to look for something else. So he's living in this local town, he's worked there, his family is there, he meets his wife there. Everything is already just sort of set in stone for you as far as what you're doing in society, the school, the everything. So even here it like revolves around him a little bit, but there was some other way I explained it that was maybe a little better. It has this sort of theme that, again, he represents the average person, right? Just somebody who's just ordinary, somebody who's going through life, again, kind of on rails, everything's sort of set for you. You're never really thinking about it, giving any sort of deeper thought to the overall structure. Everything is sort of controlled, your society, your little utopian sea haven. So it has a lot going for it that is just like really, really high level. And again, a lot of stories that would have that would suffer from either being like overly written or over talky and things like that, where they would have some issues of like they're trying too hard. But that one just flows very organically, and again, it's not even very long either. Amadeus is very good. Partly, see, these two movies have that in common, where they seem like on the surface, oh, that's just a satire on TV, right? And reality TV culture and things like that, but it could be about everything on an existential level. Yet again, he represents the ordinary person. And Amadeus too, you would expect, oh, it's just about music and it's about Mozart, but then it goes into this whole internal conflict Salieri is having with God and his own standards of meritocracy, and he feels sort of inadequate and inferior, and so he's having this sort of duel with God in his own mind about what's happening here, and he sees Mozart is like his incarnate. So it takes it totally to a different place than what you would even expect it to be about. And what's ironic about these three movies is two of them were both based on plays, number 2 and number 3. And they're written by the Schaefer brothers, like Peter Schaefer and Anthony Schaefer. And I didn't really know that even at the time. But what are the chances of that? But this is just a highly entertaining piece of work. Obviously, Laurence Olivier giving a great performance. Michael Caine when he was younger. And it's just like this one's a little more straightforward and maybe just preferential, but the other two I would vouch for almost across the board. This is obviously, it takes place all in one house with only really 2 characters, and it's like just a very well written, well acted, entertaining game theory piece of work, where it's sort of like this battle of wits between somebody who's cheating with someone's wife and the husband. So they're constantly like poking at each other and picking at each other, and there's this whole like class conflict war between the classes. Like he's a little more lower middle class, and he's just a hairdresser, and the other guy's like this wealthy author. So there's some undertone of hatred there, and obviously the whole cheating, and they come up with this whole elaborate scenario of trying to frame each other for killing or get the guy in a position where it looks like self-defense, and it's like super super well thought out. But that one, at least that I would say, is more my own personal preference. I wouldn't necessarily say I would expect other people to have that up there, but I think Amadeus is up there. Obviously it's entertaining, it's a little bit longer, but yeah, that you would be maybe surprised. And I don't even like Jim Carrey necessarily, or a lot of his movies are very stupid comedies and things like that. And his performance isn't even the reason why. Like, it's a good performance, but it's not like that's the standout element. There's just so many layers to it. The character of Christoph is extremely well done, as even though a villain, but he's like overprotective. He's almost like a father figure, right? He has this very, I don't know. That's almost how he's treating it. You have like a really good cast. Paul Giamatti is like one of the people working on the studio and the sets. There's all these avant-garde camera angles, like where it's showing you. In fact, the whole movie could be seen like that. Like, you're not watching what the director is trying to do, you're watching what the show is actually showing to the audience, right? You're watching it from that perspective, so you could analyze, like, he's in the store buying some chips, and you can see a camera looking at him through one of the products. Like, it's showing you how it would be shot with all these hidden cameras as if it was a TV show and things like that. Yeah, that's a movie that would even have surprised me that it would always have been up here, but it really is hard to fight that because, again, the main component is there's a lot of great movies, but a lot of them people would consider, oh, it's too long, or it's too talky, or it's trying too hard, or the pace isn't there. This is a well-paced, entertaining, escapist movie if you want it to be, so it appeals on that level too, but it also checks every other box too. And then what other? Let's do like one more tier list or something. I don't know. I just kind of do these random tangents, but I do have to come up with. I'll do like some collection of quotes if I do another episode like this again. But I might not even use this thing for a while, so I didn't make the greatest use of it. It's better like if you're doing diagrams and stuff, because if you're just writing stuff, it's not quite as fun. What else is something I could rank? Like my favorite games of all time, maybe. Or maybe like the games that I played the most amount of time. I could maybe overlap it with that. Most played, and even if I like do it collectively as far as series, 1,000 plus would be like Skyrim and maybe 2K series collectively, and maybe Hearthstone. Oh, look how it gets cut off at the bottom actually. Hearthstone, and obviously WoW would be probably even more than that. I don't know, 2,000 plus. It could be more. I can't even really calculate if you count like the number of in-game days. The glove again. Yeah, I always do the glove if I'm going to do the webcam thing. That's what you should be really saying, the webcam, really. How's it going? You missed the chess thing yesterday, or was he actually there? No, I don't think he was. Also with the webcam. So WoW, I did obviously 2,000 hours plus. Like, what else would I have played for a ridiculously high amount of time? And I'm at least proud to say, like, this isn't always because of multiplayer elements. Like, at least Skyrim is up there, 1,000 plus easily. 2K series is maybe unfair because it's collectively. Obviously, chess is probably, it would be hard to calculate. I mean, it's at least 1,000 hours plus, but it could be over 2 for all I know. But I mean, WoW is even between multiple expansions, so these two are almost not counted because they're not one game. They're several different versions of, like sequels, basically, expansions and things like that. Chess could just be raw chess, but then even if you count variants and things like that, Hearthstone is up there. You gotta be at least one other one, but you would think I would know it offhand. Like, even GTA 4 is going to be up there, like maybe 200 hours plus, because I did all those permadeath runs and the 100% completion. But whatever, it's like GTA 4. I don't think I played GTA 5 even really that much, even between the single player and the online. What happened to my chat there? Okay, see you later. I might end soon anyway. Yeah, you get to see the really elongated pieces on the real board, which at least there I did it in sort of a fun format, where it's a correspondence game against the bot, where I'm like really taking my time and taking it super seriously and thinking about every move and analyzing it in great detail, which is almost the way I should get used to playing. But then when you play these faster formats, and then I get clowned by somebody who's like a blitz, expert, who knows all these little cheeky attacking things, or he knows that one opening, and if I don't know it, I get screwed, so I should learn it. But you never really see it either, all these little cheeky traps along the way and stuff. So these are the most played. Like favorite games would be like Thousand Year Door, Paper Mario would be like, obviously you could say Skyrim, you could say Fallout 3 I've always praised. WoW, obviously we'd say specifically classic, but arguably BC Wrath, those are the only other two I really played. What else do you have? Like some old school. I loved Grim Fandango, although I've honestly kind of forgotten. That was like when I was younger. Donkey Kong 64. I've always like I could almost play Grim Fandango fresh and consider it a first playthrough because I don't remember shit about it. I just remember always considering it my favorite. You could maybe say Phoenix Wright, but I guess I wouldn't even really say that. What could some of the other ones be? I had a list of maybe like at least 10 of them. Like Warcraft 3 could be up there. Hearthstone could be up there. Even if that seems weird, like I'll still consider it. You can consider even a card game outside of just it being a video game if you wanted to put like Yu-Gi-Oh or something on there. Fuck it. Thousand Year Door, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Metroid Prime, I think I would have put on there. What could be the other one here? I don't know. Maybe we'll put Phoenix Wright, even though I wouldn't necessarily say that, but it has a certain staying power. It just doesn't have replay value or like plot choices, which is sad that even the series in its latter state over so many sequels still didn't really have those things. Or if you want to put like some indie games, Binding of Isaac. And yeah, you get to appreciate my beautiful handwriting here. If I Don't Starve, right, could be on there unironically. Even though, again, some of these I haven't played as much as you might think, but it's just like, it's obviously a case where you get to, whatever. It's not about how much you play them necessarily. Okay, see you tomorrow.